And welcome to our regular Tuesday evening meeting of the Danvers Select Board. We will begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Maureen has agreed to lead us.
Please. Thank you, David. Please join me. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, would you read the first item of business?
Approval of the minutes of March 19, 2024.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. Discussion, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is a vote. Thank you.
New public business.
People are invited to speak on new public business. Kindly limit your comments to 2 minutes. And please, the first person, would you identify yourself and speak into the microphone?
My name is Michael Reich.
Wait a second, Michael. I don't know if that's on.
Now it is.
Is it on?
My name is Michael Reich,
Michael?
and I've lived in Danvers for 25 years, and this is my first session here. But can you hear me?
Yes.
You can. Okay. Yes. Well, just the one town-related issue that I want to bring to your attention is, I live off Locust Street on Donegal Circle, and about 6 months ago, perhaps 8 months ago, there was work done on Locust Street, and it was, I believe it was pipes were being connected, and so there were many spots where the road was dug up, right? I'm not sure if that was, yeah, if it was gas pipes or whatever, and and then they repaved the road. So my concern/question is, are there plans to improve the roadway? Now, when you're driving a car, it's not such a big deal, but if you're on a bicycle, it is. It's just not as it's a very uneven part of the the pavement is uneven, and I recognize that this is not a life or death issue, but my question is, are there any plans to repave the area on Locust Street, which was dug up?
Thank you for your question. Steve, would you have a suggestion on that?
Yes. So the paving that you're describing was patching that was put in place after a lot of service connections were made. There is a plan to repave the road. This is the perfect opportunity for me to make a public service announcement. We have a terrific town engineer, Stephen King, and anybody who has questions about paving and road work can call his office. I don't have the exact time, but there is money in the budget to repave that road now that the utility work is complete.
And his name is?
Stephen King.
Stephen King. And is he someone I can reach through Town Hall, or?
Yes, you can call Town Hall tomorrow morning, and you can find him on the website, or you can call us and we'll give you his number.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for speaking. Was there another person that wanted to speak?
Hi, good evening. John Bowner, Zoning Board of Appeals, Greenleaf Drive. I'm just here to ask a question. I read in the Salem News, I want to say it was about a month ago, about the retirement of Pamela Parkinson. And in that article, it detailed, I guess, some money that was donated to the town back in 2018 in the amount of, I want to say, around $100,000. And I think it was earmarked for meals for the seniors, or some program to do with the senior center. So I was just wondering if you could shed some light on it. It was just kind of surprising to read about it, to see that that money hasn't, it seems like, gone anywhere.
Mr. Chairman, can I comment as Friends of the Danvers Council on Aging? Good question. $98,000 left to the senior center for meals by a resident.
Yeah, I think it was
And-
Roz
Roz, yeah.
Massey, I think.
Right,
Yeah.
and there is a plan to spend that money for meals going forward. It was in our budget hearing back on March, whatever, Saturday, we met and we did discuss that. And the manager says, confirm the money is there.
So so that money was gifted to the town, or is it part of our budget?
It's gifted to the senior center.
Do we know why it's taken so long?
We had COVID.
Okay.
The meals program was ceased, not staffed, so we have to restaff it before we can spend the money.
Okay. Well, like I said, I read the article and it just kind of surprised me. You know, it just seems like 6 years is a long time to be sitting on that amount of money for our seniors, so,
You're correct.
yeah. And lastly, I'll just say, I know people are here for about the farmer's market, and I just want to say I'm in support of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other citizens? Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would you proceed?
The board is in receipt of a one-day wine and malt license by Matthew Renzulli and Andrew Edward, event managers, on Saturday, May 18, 2024, from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. at 240 Newbury Street to benefit the family of an employee who has passed away.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me all right?
Is it Matthew?
Yes, Matthew Renzulli.
Speak right in, if you would, to the microphone,
Yep.
Matthew.
Of course. Thanks for having us. Myself, Matthew Renzulli, I'm here with Andrew Edward. We're from United Civil. We're a local utility contractor. We're located on Newbury Street in Danvers. We have submitted an application for one-day wine and malt license so we can serve beer and wine at this company event we're hosting. We'd like to host it at our office, so that's the reason for the application. The liquor manager that we've hired is tip certified, and they have the required liability coverage as well. And essentially, as was mentioned in the agenda, we are planning this event, and the whole reason for the event is to raise money for the family of an employee that passed away in 2023, tragically, unfortunately. Survived by his wife and young child, so we're trying to do something nice and get our whole company and their family together.
Thank you, Matthew. If you'd stay there, there might be a few questions.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, are the papers in order?
The paperwork is in order.
Thank you. Members of the board, are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, right here, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
So, sorry for the loss of your coworker. You're to be commended, I think, to step up and help his wife and child. So I wish you success with the event.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Are there other questions or comments?
No, just that I'm happy that you're able to do this in memory of your coworker, and good luck.
Yes, thank you. It's super important, so we appreciate you guys being here and hearing us out.
Hearing,
My standard questions about trip certification have already been answered, so I'm all set. Thank you.
thank you.
luck.
Hearing nothing further, is there a motion?
I move we accept the application as presented.
Is a second, please?
Second.
And it is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good luck, Matthew. Thank
Thanks
you
so
for
much.
coming tonight.
Have a good night.
Madam Clerk, would you proceed, please?
The board will consider a request by the Veteran Service Officer to declare the town of Danvers a Purple Heart community.
Is Kelly here?
Good evening,
Hi, Kelly.
and thank you for the chance to address you here today. I'm Kelly, and I'm the Veteran Service Officer for Danvers. And I'm here to ask the Select Board to approve the proposal for Danvers to be designated as a Purple Heart town. By becoming a Purple Heart community, Danvers would join a growing list of cities and towns across the country that have made this symbolic gesture of gratitude and respect for our veterans. It also serves as a reminder of the importance of honoring and remembering the sacrifice made to uphold our freedom and protect our way of life. And I have with us today two special guests I'd like to introduce you to. We have Army veteran Ed Coate. He was wounded during his deployment to Vietnam in 1970. And we have Mr. Army veteran Brian Willett, who was wounded during his deployment to Afghanistan in 2010. Both these gentlemen have been awarded the Purple Heart Medal in recognition of their service and their sacrifices, which deserves a round of applause. Mr. Willett also serves as the National Chief of Staff of the Military Order of Purple Heart and is here to share his knowledge and experience in guiding towns through the process of becoming a Purple Heart community. And if I can, I'll yield the floor to Mr. Willett for any questions.
Welcome, Mr. Willett.
Thank you, Kelly. The Purple Heart City and Town program dates back to 1992, just so you know, and it's part of the Purple Heart Trail System, a national program of Purple Heart trails, bridges, monuments, and cities and towns that pay tribute to the Purple Heart recipients. Within them, it begins at George Washington's Mount Vernon. The first Purple Heart Trail marker is established in 1992, and since that time, they're in every single state. There's Purple Heart Trail cities and towns in every city, every state. And Massachusetts has approximately 125 of its communities as Purple Heart communities, including Boston, Worcester, Springfield, Northampton, Pittsfield, and many, many in between. Some of the most notable routes in Massachusetts are Purple Heart Trail routes, Route 146 from Rhode Island into Worcester, and also in Boston, the Constitution the Cass and Young and the USS Constitution are Purple Heart ships, along with the national park that associates with those locations. So that you would be joining that group of folks as well. The Purple Heart was established on August 7th, 1782 by General George Washington in the closing days of the Revolution. It was awarded to 3 individuals. It was supposed to be a permanent decoration, but it was forgotten about. And as we approached the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, General Douglas MacArthur, then Army Chief of Staff, began to find ways. They were looking basically the way to honor George Washington in that bicentennial year of his birth. And they came across the records of the Badge of Military Merit, as it was called then. And the Purple Heart was reestablished as the Purple Heart you know today on Washington's birthday, 1932. And since that time, 1.9 million Americans have been wounded or killed in action and been awarded the Purple Heart. 1 million nearly 1 million for World War II, and 300,000 from the Vietnam War, and over 55,000 from our current war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so taking the step of becoming a Purple Heart town is very meaningful, not only to us, but to the family members as well. And I'm sure I can share the sentiments of Mr. Coate that it was our privilege to serve. You know, in someone's eyes it may be a sacrifice, but for us it was an honor. And that's something we all share together. And if I can answer any questions about it, some of the things that are entailed in it are special ceremonies, which is August 7th, as I mentioned, flag raising, dinners have been done, breakfasts, various ways to commemorate and honor Purple Heart recipients in your community. And when you create the events, they will come. Another is this beautiful sign here. And this sign, which will be posted somewhere in town, or perhaps others like it, stands as a visual reminder that others have paid a high price for us to live in a free community. So the sign is what we always look for. And when Kelly said she was jumping on that sign, I knew this was a special event. Sometimes we got to pull them in that direction. But I'm honored to be here, and really, Kelly did all the work, and she's the reason I'm down here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Willett.
Certainly.
Wonderful to have you here. Are there questions or comments from members of the board? Go right ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your service, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is there plans to sort of identify the recipients of this award and kind of keep them kind of in our memory so that they're not forgotten? Is that something that comes along with this designation?
Yeah, absolutely. This always involves the local veterans organizations. There's no compiled list of the Purple Heart. Now, today in modern times, it's an initiative that's beginning on the national level to begin cataloging all Purple Heart recipients for the record. But that was never done before, and has not really been done to this date. So what we do is we rely on our Veteran Service Office, we rely on our Veteran Service Organizations, Dick with the VFW, and other groups that get the word out, say a ceremony to take place on August 7th of this year. It's well advertised, it's well shared by our veterans and by word of mouth, and they always come. That's been our experience. So, and many are like Mr. Coate and Dick from the Vietnam War, who really, for the first time, they come out to be honored. They want to see what we're doing, and we have a chance to say thank you to them like we just did for Vietnam Veterans Day last week. And they're still our major group of Purple Heart recipients to this day.
That's great. Can I just have another question before we turn it to the audience? So, excuse me. So it's important that we keep the memory of these people that have sacrificed either their lives or they were seriously injured. Oftentimes we forget about them, and it's most evident with Mr. Mooney, I think, and Ken Reardon. There's a Medal of Honor recipient who's buried just several hundred yards down the street, Daniel Stevens from the Civil War. And his grave site and his headstone really fell into disrepair. I think the headstone actually fell over. And I say that we should keep, keep these individuals at the forefront of our memory and honor them always, right? So, Mr.
Absolutely.
Stevens, he was forgotten about, and through the work of Dick and others, we're able to kind of bring that honor back to him. So when you visit his grave site today, it's quite impressive.
I appreciate that. There's three things we do as veterans that mean the most to us. We honor our dead, we remember our missing, and we take care of our Gold Star families that are left behind. That's something that we take to heart as a mission, and we never let go of that. So that's in that spirit. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, would you be willing to go to the podium and speak into the microphone?
I'm Sue Bent. I'm a VFW auxiliary member here in town. Brian, will family members be able to register their loved ones who are Purple Heart honorees who are not involved in any military organizations that might not know about this?
Absolutely. That is a great question, and yes, you can. There's two things that I want you to be aware of. One is the Purple Heart Hall of Honor, which stands in New York, almost on the site where the first Purple Hearts were awarded in 1932. And the Purple Heart Hall of Honor honors all Purple Heart recipients from all wars, and their names are submitted to that hall. And they can be honored with pictures, photographs, their stories, and it's really a great resource that we work with all the time. And in terms of ceremonies, we attended a ceremony in Brockton recently where many family members were in attendance. Where unfortunately, Purple Heart recipient had passed away, say a World War II veteran, and the families were there to receive that honor. So this is very much a family affair for us. I can tell you that. Well, that's one of the beauties of this project is you have a chance to reach folks that really, whether they thought they were forgotten or whether they have put it in their past. It's something we never put in our past, and it's when they find out that the town is honoring their service, it will be very meaningful to those veterans. I promise you, that is for sure. And if the board should act tonight, I would like to make a presentation to the board as well, if you should so see to act on the legislation tonight.
I'll be next, David. Thank you. I think this is great. Thank you from Kelly, Dick, everybody, bringing it to our hometown. I think it's wonderful. You know, we always want to honor, respect, and never forget our vets. So I am for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Maureen, further comments from the board members, questions?
No, the proclamation says it clearly that Mr. Bennett's going to read, and we received an attached letter describing the application process, so I'm comfortable with the.
Thank you, Mr. Willett. We have a proclamation which will be read right now by Select Board Member Bennett.
First of all, thank you for your service, both of you, and any other veteran in the room.
You're welcome.
Town of Danvers proclamation, Purple Heart Town. Whereas the people of the town of Danvers have great admiration and the utmost gratitude for all the men and women who have selflessly served their country and this community and the armed forces for the good of all. And whereas contributions and sacrifices of the men and women from Danvers who served in harm's way in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedom and the way of life enjoyed by our citizens. And whereas citizens of our community have been killed in action while serving in the armed forces and have been awarded the Purple Heart for the ultimate sacrifice. And whereas citizens of our community have been awarded the Purple Heart for their bodily sacrifice of being wounded in action while engaged in combat. And whereas the Purple Heart is the oldest American military decoration in present use and was created as the badge of military merit on August 7, 1782 in Newburgh, New York, by General George Washington. Initially, it was made of purple cloth shaped as a heart with the word merit sewn upon it. And whereas the heritage it represents is sacred to those who know the price paid to wear the Purple Heart, and whereas August 7th is nationally recognized as Purple Heart Appreciation Day. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed, we, the Select Board, on behalf of the town of Danvers, go on record to hereby proclaim Danvers, Massachusetts, a Purple Heart town and recognize August 7th as Purple Heart Day, honoring the service and sacrifice of our nation's men and women in uniform that were wounded or killed by the enemy while serving to protect the freedoms enjoyed by all Americans.
We consider that a motion made by Mr. Bennett. There is a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous, of course, and thank you very much, Mr. Willett.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I approach?
Of course. And thank you to Kelly for the superb job of representing our veterans in this community.
Great, thank you very much, sir.
Oh, thank you so much. My dad was in the Korean War. Yeah, he was a lieutenant, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. This is something we say thank you. It's just a
Thank you, Brian.
token of thanks from us to you all for
Thank you,
taking
sir.
that step. Would you mind if I ask the veterans to come up here?
Sure, absolutely, yeah, yeah, thank you. Sure.
Would the veterans join me up, President, up front here? I'm gonna, Kelly? Speaking of flag raising, this is something, we could also take a picture of the sun. So, you know, grab it, yeah, no, that'd be great. Oh, it's got to do it.
You want us to come down, Kelly?
Excellent.
You want us to stand up or come down? Okay. All rise.
Scooch down a little.
Get those wrinkles out.
I can text this one to Kelly, and she can share it out to everybody.
Perfect.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Brian.
Thank you.
Wear it wrong.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, no, it's not, it doesn't happen as often as it should.
Thank you, Dick. We will proceed with the next agenda item.
The board is in receipt of a first-time banner request by students at Danvers High School over Maple Street from April 22nd through the 30th of, April 22nd through the 30th for Danvers Market, pending approval by the board, to be held on the grounds of the Danvers Library on May 8, 2024.
Now, are there student representatives here?
Looks
Would you
like
be
it.
comfortable going to the podium, please? And for those who speak, into the microphone so everyone can hear you, please.
I'll start off. I'm Reese Holland.
I'm Andrea Gaudino.
I'm Krista Zamaitis. I'm Lily Mastrangelo, and we have two other members who could not be here tonight, Catherine Angelopoulos and Megan Evans.
Members of what, dear?
Of our senior project citizen class. So today, or in the last coming months, we've been working on a public policy project in our senior project citizen class. Some of our classmates and I have been in communication with several organizations in town, including Falcon Fest, Rotary Club, and actually Miss Jen Breaker herself. Through this process, we've concluded that a one-time community market would be the best proposal for our town today. We are hoping to host this on May 8th from 5 to 8 p.m. at the Peabody Institute Library grounds. And as stated before, you said that we were trying to acquire permission for one of our banners.
So we have been working with the 8th grade civics department because the requirements of our class kind of align with what they're learning right now. And we have, obviously we're graduating this year, and so we're proposing that the Danvers brings back the farmers market, but instead of it being a farmers market, just more of a community market to help small businesses have an opportunity to sell their product. So we've been working along the 8th graders, and we've given them the task of creating a banner to promote and advertise to the community. So we were hoping that with your approval, we could hang the banner downtown to let people know that we're bringing this back and to spread awareness.
Also, I just want to keep in mind, while we are letting the 8th graders design it, we are monitoring what it's going to look like, because we do know they're in 8th grade. No offense to them. We can answer any questions that you guys may have now.
Okay, if you'd stay there, there may be questions. Thank you. Matt, have you questions?
I do, sir. No problem with the banner. I'm just concerned with when you say the grounds of the library. What does that actually mean? You talking about having vehicles on the grass, that kind of thing?
Yes, so we would have some food trucks there, possibly, definitely tents. We confirmed this with the town manager, that it could be done at the Peabody Institute Library, near the gazebo.
All right.
It'll be similar to the ones that were hosted last year with the library concerts. I think there was some sort of food trucks or dessert trucks,
Yep.
so it'll be pretty similar to that.
Okay. And then you'll sort of be, your group will be responsible for the event in terms of making sure that everything is kind of works together in terms of managing the event, and then also the cleanup afterwards.
Yes, so the six of us will be the main managerial establishment of this event, but we also have some of our adult teachers helping us out too, mainly in the civics department in 8th grade. Ms. Facette is one of the teachers that has been helping us out greatly with this project. And in terms of cleanup, we also have a lot of 8th graders who need National Junior Honor Society hours, so they're going to be helping up with the cleanup as well.
All right. Well, sounds great. I wish you success with the event.
Thank you, Matt. Are there other questions or comments? Dan?
Thank you. What hours will you be setting up and breaking down?
Setup will probably start up around 4:30, and then it ends at 8, so I can imagine.
So just a
however-
late afternoon, evening event?
Yes.
Okay. Rain date? It won't rain, I understand. but-
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear. I'm like that. Oh, May 15th, sorry.
Thank you.
Anything else? Dan?
No, that's it.
Gardner?
So I'm excited that you're starting the farmers market. I helped previously it was run through a coordination with the town pre-COVID during concerts at the library lawn. So they continue to have food trucks at those concerts as well. I'm not worried at all about you having the vehicles there. I encourage it. I think that's great. And I'd encourage you to work in coordination with the food pantry as well. So congratulations and good luck.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Gardner.
A follow-up, if I may,
Sure,
please.
of course.
To let Jen and the manager aware that Danvers Cares Light the Night Purple event is scheduled for May 15th. You're aware of that? Okay.
Thank you, Dan. Anything further? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the first-time banner request by the students at Danvers High School over Maple Street from April 22 to 30 for the Danvers Market pending approval. No, we're doing that now. To be held on the grounds of the library, May 8th.
Thank you, Dan. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion and second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's a unanimous vote, and thanks for being with us tonight. Sounds
So
very,
much. We
very
appreciate it.
interesting. Madam Clerk?
Too many.
Way to make an entrance?
Good night, everybody.
The board will review the warrant for the May 2024 annual town meeting.
Mr. Manager, would you be willing to be the
All right,
concierge?
take care. Have a good night.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to start with some housekeeping. The warrant booklets were provided in your packets Friday. They were mailed to Finance Committee and town meeting members last Thursday and Friday, so they should have landed at this point. We did bring a half a dozen copies tonight. I see one left, so they have made their way into the audience as designed. I also want to note that the warrant that we'll be discussing tonight and probably on Thursday is on the website. If you go to the Our Government Town Meeting tab, you will find all the documents related to the 2024 annual town meeting so far are posted there. You'll find the warrant itself. You will find the 27-page report from the Ad Hoc Preservation, Historic Preservation Committee, as well as copies of the Town Manager Act and Town Meeting Act, which are subject to Article 7, which we'll be discussing. The warrant itself is 43 articles long, so I anticipate we will need tonight and Thursday night to make our way through the warrant. We have it organized so that the Thursday will be the capital projects that we're used to reviewing, the IT-related projects that we're used to reviewing. What we have lined up for tonight, and time permitting, maybe a little more, is the Town Manager, Town Meeting Act article that was discussed by the board at their last meeting. We have 4 bylaw-related articles, 1 new bylaw, 3 amended bylaws, and 5 citizens petitions. So tonight is the non-capital projects, and if time permits at the end, we can start to go through some of the miscellaneous recurring articles that we have each year. I won't spend much time, but on the screen here is the process that we're working our way through. As was mentioned earlier, we completed our budget review on March 16th. And in the weeks ahead, we'll be starting the budget and the warrant process with the Finance Committee, making our way to the May 20 town meeting. The first article, and so for the organization of this presentation tonight, for those who have their warrant booklets with them, we won't be going sequentially, but on each slide, you'll see the corresponding page in the warrant book. We thought we would start tonight with the article that was discussed by the board at the last meeting, and we've invited our town attorney, David DeLuca, who worked with members of his office to review both of the documents in question, and then to review with me the process that the town went through in the 1990s when it last went through this exercise. So Article 7 essentially would establish a committee of town meeting members to be appointed by the town moderator to go through a public process to review and make recommendations back to town meeting related to any changes that they feel would enhance and improve democracy at the local level in Danvers. There are 2 documents that really form the basis of our local governing documents. We have the Town Meeting Act, which was established in 1930 and has been amended, I believe, 6 times since then, most recently in 1973. And the corresponding document is the one that we reference more often. That's the Danvers Town Manager Act. That was adopted in 1949 and I believe amended 2 or 3 times between 1949 and 1997. Nuance here, not important, 2 different ways to reach the same result, but the Town Manager Act, when it was updated in 1997, the original document was repealed and replaced, even though the document itself was largely unchanged. The Town Meeting Act was amended 5 or 6 times. Attorney DeLuca could attest that it's a lot easier when a document is repealed and replaced clean, as opposed to having to chase 6 or 7 different legislative sessions to find out which word was moved and why. But that's the process in a nutshell. I believe the last time this was done, Peter Zook was the town moderator, and that committee was appointed, did its work through a series of public meetings, and then came back to a subsequent town meeting where the recommendations were debated and ultimately voted, and then sent to the legislature for approval, because we are a special act community, and none of those changes are binding until the legislature votes them into law. So that was the request from the board to prepare this article, and Attorney DeLuca and I would be happy to take any questions that you might have.
First of all, members of the board, are there questions or comments from members? Mr. Duggan?
All right, I'll kick it off.
Matt, speak right in.
Yep. So I think it's been quite a while since we visited this document. It's been maybe since the mid to late 90s. So I know some communities do this on a periodic basis, maybe every 5 years or so, so they revisit it and kind of see it as a living document. Are we kind of considering that as part of this process?
I have seen what you're describing. Some communities do it every 10 years. I've never seen it every 5 years, because it is a heavy lift for the committee that's appointed. But that would be a recommendation that this board could make to that committee, or any resident could make to that committee. But the question tonight is whether to form the committee. But that certainly would be a topic that would be something the committee could take on as a task.
All right, thanks for that clarification. So first concern is just the first sentence when it says that the town will vote to establish a committee with a minimum of 7 town meeting members. What is the selection criteria for these individuals? We'd want something diverse selection, right? So it would be a robust process, and not just kind of a sugar-coated attempt at updating what we have today.
I can't speak for Peter Zook, who was the last town moderator to appoint this committee. I know in going through the records that Peter appointed 1 town meeting member from each precinct, and then a chair, and I'm not sure which precinct the chair was from, but there were 9 town meeting members appointed. So there was representation from each precinct. But this article is consistent with past articles and articles I've seen from other communities where, as part of being elected to the role of moderator, discretion is given to that individual to appoint a committee that will come back with something that will be deemed as credible by the town meeting, which ultimately has to vote on any and all of the recommendations.
Sure, and we know that our town meeting members are a diverse group, so I would hope that the selection would be kind of across the board, so you'd have different perspectives, so you can really, get a good quality result, and not just have people that are just kind of all on the same page, right, so to speak. So I think that's all I have for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, David. I know we've been talking about this for a
Maureen,
while.
please speak.
Yes, I'm sorry. I know we've been talking about this for a while, and I think it's a good idea. I know we're just talking tonight about forming the committee. I think it's a great idea. It hasn't been done in a while, and what Select Board Member Duggan said, I like something. If we can get this, the moderator, maybe like do a talent pool, like through the precincts, will the Select Board be able to choose from that criteria? If we choose the 7 members, maybe I'd like to see that, and I think it's just a great idea, and I like the idea maybe every 5 years. And that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan?
Just kind of a question, comment. When we talked about this a couple of months ago, my thought was for this select board to appoint a committee to review it, and on further thought in discussion with the town manager, we thought it best to keep the same format as in the past, as Peter Zook appointed the town meeting members to do this. Probably we're best as a board not to really interfere with the moderator and her selection process. Certainly as individuals, we can talk with the moderator with some thoughts, but it's going to be a committee appointed by the moderator, not the select board. Unless I'm mistaken on the process.
That's what it is.
Gardner, did you? Oh, excuse
I'd
me,
like to
are you
echo
done?
Selectman Bennett.
You done?
Are we done?
I'll pause.
I would like to echo Selectman Bennett's recommendation. This should be the town moderator. You want to take the politics out of it. We are elected officials. I think by having her do it, presumption that it'll be Pat Frazier will do it, but having the moderator do it, it takes some of that level of politics out of it. I don't want to approve that committee. I want her to assign the committee by whatever standards she has. Not unlike FinCom. We don't get involved in FinCom decisions either. So I'm comfortable. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. No.
Those are my comments. I'm fully in support of this. I actually would like to, if we were to be tweaked, I would ask for one representative from each precinct plus, a chair. And in as much as someone may ask, though the board is our town meeting members de facto, I would not expect that we would be serving on this at all.
Thank you, Gardner. My father was elected town moderator in 1964 and served for 23 years. I had a short stint as town moderator, and I have, of course, known all of the town moderators for the past 60 years. I have watched Pat Frazier as a lawyer and as a town moderator, and I believe she has impeccable judgment, complete integrity, and the ability to make a decision on committee formation totally in the interests of all of the citizens of the town of Danvers. So I think it should be the town moderator, who is Pat Frazier at this time, and I support this, and I think it is a good idea. We've talked about it quite a bit, and I think it's time to proceed. Thank you.
Would you like a motion at this time, Mr.
Is
Chairman?
there, yes, wait a second. I can't see out back.
Mark?
Mr. Zuberg? Yes, did you want to speak to this? Yes.
I was just instructed to be brief, so I am going to be brief.
Thank you, Mr. Bradstreet.
He's your co-chairman.
Exactly.
The question that I have, and the comment, basically, is that this committee that you're going to be having Pat Frazier set up is selected from 8 precinct town meeting members, each one of each. However, I think that committee should be expanded at least for 2 or 3 citizens from the community, because what you're having right now is the town meeting controlling the whole environment of what the government looks like. So what I would suggest is that you expand the number of participants, and maybe 2 or 3 should be appointed, whether it's Pat Frazier or the Board of Selectmen, it doesn't matter, but I think that needs to be expanded. So that's my comment.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you,
can I
Mr.
follow
Zuber.
up on that?
Let him sit down first.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, you may have a rebuttal. Thank you. I just want to point out, we're establishing a committee with a minimum of 7 town meeting members. It doesn't say 1 from each precinct. It doesn't say it can't be more. It's a minimum of, and the moderator will make those decisions when she appoints the committee and who should be on that committee.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve Article 7 as written.
Thank you. Is there a
Mr. Chairman,
second?
quick question, quick point of order. As we go through these, I would like to ask that the board members forward each of these with either a favorable or unfavorable recommendation. We have been, we get caught up when we get to town meeting on issues of no action and the confusion it causes. I think
Thank
we
you.
are
I was looking
leaders.
for that word favorable. I'll add
Favorable,
that to-
okay.
I'll
Thank
add
you.
that to my motion. Thank you.
I'll second the motion for favorable.
Okay, is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous in a vote. Thank you, Madam Clerk. No, I'm sorry.
Nope.
Steve, I think that you are the.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clerk's a tough job. I don't want that job. Next is Article 8. You can find that on pages 5 through 7 in the warrant booklets. We're joined tonight by Linda Leonard and Bob Gamer, who brought this topic before the board some months ago. And the board agreed, based on the recommendations from Linda and Bob, to have a bylaw prepared. Ann Freitas in my office and Frank Giacalone, our health director, assisted in preparing the bylaw that is included in the warrant. You will note that when we started our research, we found that a lot of communities who have adopted bylaws such as this, rather than having a standalone bylaw next to something like the plastic bag bylaw that was passed 5 or 6 years ago, it becomes a new section in that bylaw, so that's the way that this was set up. The plastic bag reduction bylaw becomes Section 1 in the bylaw, and the styrofoam ban becomes Section 2. And before turning it over to the board for questions, I would note that around a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, Ann Freitas worked with health and sent more than 200 cards to every business in Danvers that has a food license and doesn't necessarily, but could serve and use this product. In that mailing, she shared the date of this meeting and the Finance Committee meeting, provided her phone number and also an email address. And to date, we've received exactly 0 emails and 1 phone call. So with that, I'm sure Linda and Bob, or Bob, would be happy to take questions, and I certainly would be happy to take questions.
May I suggest that Linda and Bob could make a simple explanation of what their project was that has been totally approved by the select board, so they need not convince us tonight, I don't think, unless anyone wants to be reconvinced. But if you would just briefly explain what your request was and what this amendment does, and then there may be people in the audience with some follow-up questions.
Well, while they're making their way to the podium, Mr. Chairman, I just want to mention that, yes, this board voted to ask the town manager to draft this. But I think most of us were waiting for devils in the details, and now we've got them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Linda. Thank you for being here. Hi. And speak right into the microphone, please.
Yeah, Bob and I decided that we needed to do something about styrofoam because it persists in the environment forever and ever. It breaks down slowly into smaller beads, and we came before the board, and you were very receptive, and we were very grateful for that.
Thank you, Bob. Had you something else to add?
And let me add, in addition to what the town...
Bob, would you speak into
Yes.
the microphone?
In addition to what the town manager pointed out regarding contacting businesses, Linda and I spent 2 months contacting businesses as to their use of styrofoam, and we found most of them do not use it, and those who do are quite willing to switch if necessary.
Thank you. Would you both remain there in case there are some questions from board members on this particular text, which we haven't publicly discussed? And then there may be questions from people in the audience with respect to this text. Board members first, please. Gardner.
Actually, Dan was one of the point people. Would you like to go first?
Thank you. I just want to thank Bob, Linda for doing their due diligence to reach out to the businesses in town to explain it, and that helped us come to our conclusion that it is not onerous on the business, and it only makes sense for the community and the state at large to eliminate this nasty item from our landfills, et cetera. Thank you. And I do have some questions about the text interior if you want to do that now or later.
Sure, you do help yourself.
So I understand the plastic bag, and that's all well and good. I just have a concern that we're being too lenient on the enforcement process. This plastic bag ban's been in since 2018, 2019. Everybody should know that it's against our laws to have plastic bags. So I think a first offense really should be a fine, not just a warning. They've had plenty of time to be warned about it. And just point out, the state of Rhode Island just implemented a statewide ban on plastic bags, and their fines are $100 first offense, $200 second, and $500 subsequent. That's a little onerous myself, I think, but I think we should change the warning to at least $25. And I would add, and we're going to make them approve this, I'll make that motion. For the styrofoam, where it's new, perhaps the warning is sufficient, but maybe we could put a grandfather clause in there after 2 years, that it goes from a warning on the first offense to some type of monetary thing, just to show that we're serious. Thank you.
Anything else?
Not
Guys
this time.
around the text.
Yep. So in general, I agree with everything you say about the impacts of the environment. I think it's horrific. I did hear that the number of cards went out to businesses. I don't want to presume that non-response is approval or acceptance. I did talk to 3 business owners, including Carriot Brothers, and there is a cost. He showed me the current clamshells he uses. The styrofoam ones cost him 12 cents. The plastic ones he's going to have to go to cost him 42 cents. There is a cost, probably pushed off onto the consumers. But I don't want to go with the thought that there is no impact. We are doing this on the backs of those businesses, and I'm willing to accept that, but I did tell him and the other 2 business owners I would bring their comments here. I would suggest that we stay with a warning for the first offense, even on bags. Keep it simple, keep it straightforward, keep it consistent between the 2. And we're not out to make money. I think we do a good job as a town of not trying to heavy-hand fines and when there's offenses. So I think a warning is sufficient, and then followed by $1,500. I like the numbers here. So I'm in support of the way it's written at the moment.
Thank you, Gardner. Maureen, had you questions or comments?
No, I'm in support too. I just, like Gardner said, to be passed on to the consumer. And this is really, what about like building supplies, like insulation, ridge board? Does that matter when people, that doesn't at all, right? Okay, so no, I'm in support of this. I think it's good.
This is just food service
Just
containers.
for the food, right, yeah. I think it's good. And thank you for doing all the research, and we want to keep our environment clean. I'm all set.
Matt, anything?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So first, it's unfortunate that we have to do this as a community effort, and it's not statewide. There's probably at least 10 or 12 states in the country that already have this type of ban, I think. But the last one was New Jersey, and that was in 2022. So, it's been a while. I would like to see this kind of expanded, not just for restaurants, but, you go to the supermarket. Since you were here last, I've been collecting my styrofoam trays for meat and for produce. And that pile's probably at least 18 inches to maybe 2 feet high. That's where you're going to see the big bang for the buck is supermarkets, I think. That's the restaurants and stuff. I think that's not really going to make a huge impact on the use in town, from my perspective, anyway. And then, on the fines, it's all about education. If they could prove that they didn't know about it, maybe a warning is appropriate. But we've seen instances with plastic bags where they just kind of thumbed their nose at us. So that's all I have for
Thank
the
you,
moment.
Matt. I suspect that as far as supermarkets and that kind of stuff, so much of that travels in interstate commerce that I suspect that would be federal regulation, and I don't think that a local bylaw would be effective at all. The first opportunity to enforce it would be challenged as a interference with interstate commerce. I think, that's just my suggestion. Is there any further discussion? Board members, members of the audience? Is there a motion?
Chairman, I move
Excuse
we-
me, I'm sorry, I can't see. Bill, there's no light on down there.
Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I'm old, I've been around for a long time. A lot of people are well aware, I don't think a warning is appropriate for a first offense. If they don't know by now, tell them right up front, this is it. Don't warn them, they should know. I do.
Thank you.
I want to
Anything-
thank the Select Board for your unanimous support of this, too.
Well, your hard work and dedication to it is certainly the impetus that carried the ball. Is there a motion?
That's a question, if I may.
Sure.
Matt really wasn't definitive in his thoughts on the fines. He kind of back and forth, so I don't know if I should include it in my motion or not. I mean, I know I can count to 2, but I need to count to 3.
Yeah, I'm fine with a fine on first offense.
Okay, so I'll make a motion, we approve Article 8 on a favorable recommendation.
Second motion?
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Linda. Back to you, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we have 3 related bylaw recommendations. Those can be found on pages 22 and 23 in the warrant booklet, as well as in the appendices section, where the red line versions of these bylaws are included. We're joined tonight by Dan Gagnon, who worked and spearheaded this effort through the ad hoc Historic Preservation Committee that was appointed by the town moderator after our last town meeting. And I certainly will not do justice to any of these topics in a way that Dan will, so I'll turn it right over to Dan.
Steve, once again, please, which are the items that Dan?
We're discussing now Articles 35, 36, and 37 in the booklets, and those can be found on pages 22 and 23.
Thank you. Dan, you're a real credit to this community. Thank you. Would you proceed and tell
Thank
us
you, Mr.
about
Chairman.
35, 36, and 37?
Sure. Would you like me to go one at a time and allow for a vote?
Yes, please, and would you speak right into the microphone?
Yes.
And wait, is it your question yet? People, 3 at a time or 1 at a time?
I think we should take these one at a time because they are 3 distinct recommendations.
Thank you. Please speak up, Dan.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for giving the ad hoc study committee a moment to talk about these bylaws. I know that the board knows, but the audience and those listening at home might not, that the committee was created last May at the annual town meeting by a finance committee recommendation that was then voted on by the whole town meeting. The members of this committee were appointed by the moderator. They included myself as chairman, Louis George as vice chairman representing the Preservation Commission. We had Jim Sears from the Planning Board, Corinne Doherty from the Zoning Board, and Eric Mitchell from the Finance Committee, and that made up our committee. Our charge was wide, to come up with a comprehensive report, which is available on the town website with the warrant materials, and to give recommendations, if any, on amending town bylaws having to do with historic preservation. The first one up, Article 35, is the demolition delay. With the demolition delay, this is just revisions to a bylaw that does already exist. And the committee, as its perspective or as its lens, sought to improve preserving historic structures while ensuring that our regulations were narrow enough to include just those that are likely historically significant. We see this in our recommendations for this first bylaw. Our first change is to the definition of demolition, and this was based on comments made by the Preservation Commission, and in particular, the Building Commissioner. The goal was to make sure that it was refined enough that only real substantive demolitions would get a building permit sent to the Preservation Commission. The previous language was kind of vague, in which building commissioner was afraid even like changing windows might trigger the demo delay, which was never its intent and never its purpose. So that language has been refined. Additionally, the bylaw as it exists now covers all buildings 100 years or older as of today, which means there'll be more buildings tomorrow and more buildings the next day covered under that bylaw. This changes it to a date certain, built in 1925 or prior. That gives property owners, really, it's fair warning. The date does not change on them. You know in Danvers, if you buy a building on one side of 1925, it would be covered by this, or if you buy one on the other side, it would not be covered by this. There's a level of certainty there. Among those structures that are covered by the delay, we recommended increasing the current 12-month delay only for select structures. Those structures that are from 1925 up until 199 years old, nothing changes. It would still be a 12-month delay if they were found historically significant. Only for structures that are more, or that are 200 years old or older, or are listed on the National Register of Historic Places, could have a delay as long as 18 months if the Preservation Commission were to determine that. And lastly, we included language that we found when examining other communities' bylaws about transfer of ownership during the delay period. This was just a best practice that every town who's revised their bylaw in the past, really like decade, had included. It's not really an innovation. The point of the bylaw is to negotiate with the person redeveloping that property, whereas currently a developer could have the prior owner go through the process and trigger the bylaw, and then you would never be able to negotiate with the developer because they weren't technically the owner during that process. Whereas the bylaw itself, the goal is to have this delay as an opportunity to negotiate, compromise, and find solutions. You can only do that if you're actually talking to the correct person. And so those are our changes to the bylaw that we had suggested.
Thank you, Dan. If you'd stay there, there may be questions, comments. First, board members.
I have no questions. It was presented to the Preservation Commission. I've read the bylaws. I think I got 6 copies of it throughout the process. I'm very much in favor. Initially, when the Preservation tried to amend the delay to 18 months on all buildings, I was kind of spoke against that at town meeting a number of years ago, but I'm in favor of this date specific and the 18 months for the buildings over 200 years old or on the historic registry, so I'm very much in favor.
Thank you, Dan. Gardner?
Mr. Chairman, I'm referring to the appendix, which actually has the redlined copies of the changes. And I, too, am in favor of date specific, date certain. So I'm wondering why section F on section 2, paragraph, or identified as F, it still refers to 200 years, so on and so. Why can't we set date certain for all of them? I just think it adds clarity. I like the clarity of date certain. I think it should be consistent throughout that you have date certain. That's my thought. I won't make an amendment to that point, but if there's an opportunity to modify that prior to going to FinCom or to town meeting, I would be far more in favor. I would be more in favor of it. I do have a bit of concern about the transfer of ownership language. If someone is in their 16th month of an 18-month hold, and I think the clock should start when the clock starts, 12 months or 18 months, and continue on with new owners if that's the case. That person has done their the first owner has done their due diligence, tried to sell the properties, tried to find a plan that could save the property, whatever solutioning they may have done, to then put another 12 or 18 months on a new owner because they bought the property. I'm struggling with that part of property rights. So maybe you can provide some detail as to why that shouldn't be a concern.
Thank you, Mr. Trask. The commission's thinking and the thinking in the other communities' bylaws is that the inability to negotiate with the individual who would actually be demolishing the structure undermines the intention of the bylaw, the intent and purpose at the beginning, which is to encourage that person to maybe consider, for example, like including it in their redevelopment. In the past, there have been applications where somebody is essentially just the straw owner, and that it gives no opportunity to actually accomplish the goal of the bylaw. It's people sitting around waiting, but you can't negotiate. You can't work to find a solution. The Preservation Commission kind of can't do its job. The delay is not the job. The delay just gives them time to do their job. But if it's not the correct person, it can't be accomplished in that way.
Okay, thank you. And in the delay, you granted a delay, what is the responsibility of the Preservation Commission to work to a solution? Is it, are they an active participant in some sort of solutioning with the property owner, going for grants, trying to find funding, trying to solve the solution by selling it to someone who will rehab the building? Or I guess I'm trying to understand what you impose a delay, but then what is the responsibility of the people who are imposing the delay, who are petitioning for the delay, to then help solve the problem?
Sure. I will say in my time as an alternate in the Preservation Commission, which is a year and a half or so, we've never imposed a delay. So I can answer that from someone sitting in the audience as to what I've seen in the past, but not my own experience. Typically, yes, I can think of when I had seen the home on Summer Street go through the Preservation Commission process a little over a year ago, that members of the commission had reached out with opportunities of trying to save that house, of ways that they suggested splitting lots and then listing the house, and the property owner had been given by the commission listings of websites, magazines where people specifically look for historic houses to try to help facilitate a sale. The commission has in the past recommended grant programs, which kind of at the federal level kind of fallen by the wayside, so it's not quite what it used to be as that opportunity, but really helping them to try to facilitate like a sale, splitting a lot in a sale. That's my experience, and that is, it's their job to be involved. On the other hand, one can also imagine the situation where the developer, I know in some situations, again, prior to my time, does not want any more information and would rather write out the delay. So it kind of depends on the situation from past cases that I've seen.
Thank you. I'm in favor of this. I appreciate your answers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Maureen, had you questions or comments?
No, I just think you do great work, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, just to commend you, Dan, and and the committee for the work. I read the report, and it's quite comprehensive. It could almost serve as a kind of a roadmap going forward. Now, specific to this article, you mentioned during your presentation that you got away from the rolling window, which I think was a 100-year look back. So that now you're locked in at 1925. Is that because that buildings that were constructed after that date have no historical significance and are therefore not worthy of preservation?
I would not say that. I would say that there are a couple reasons that led us to that date. And really the impetus to changing from a rolling date to a fixed date was some public comment that we had received, and also the opinions of some of the members of the study committee as well. So it kind of came from two directions. The idea was really certainty for the property owners. There are definitely buildings after 1925 that could be significant. We had, as an example in the committee, as we discussed this, what if a future President of the United States is born in the year 2024 in Danvers? We assumed that house would go on the National Register pretty quickly. And so it would still be covered that way as being on the National Register of Historic Places. Were there to be some absolutely outstanding structure? And with our recommendations, 10 years from today, I'm not suggesting this, but 10 years from today, someone might say, let's add 5 more years. And so all those options are open for the future. We're not binding anybody's hands in the future. Just for at this point in time, we thought that was significant. And we also looked at, in terms of affecting property owners, the late 1920s, there are a lot more buildings constructed each year. That would mean in only a few short years of the late 20s and early 30s, you'd be covering many more structures. And we consulted with the town archivist about that, and how you would actually be capturing bigger and bigger portions of the town, which we didn't necessarily feel was appropriate at this point.
Sure, I understand. So I think you're referring probably to post-World War II, where you have just ranch houses that are cookie cutters. So I agree with that. Pertaining to the delay itself, so can you just, for something that was built in the early 1900s, that's a 1-year delay at this point? It's currently 1 year, and you're not proposing any change to that? Is that correct?
No, we are not.
Okay. So, what we see today, and we see it kind of time and time again, where developers just kind of factor that into their project, right? That they're going to submit a request a permit for demolition. They're told they have to wait. That's already factored in, and they'll just sit on their hands and wait. So there's not really any incentive for them to kind of make any effort to do anything. And I the train station is kind of something that bugs everybody and that cares about preservation. Are there any other communities that kind of provide an incentive in the terms of like tax credits or some other way to kind of motivate them to kind of look at things from a different perspective rather than just tear something down and build something else?
We had not seen that at the local level. One of our recommendations in the report, especially for the historic district part, was to kind of publicize federal and state grant programs. As I mentioned, the federal ones have kind of fallen by the wayside. The Secretary of the Commonwealth runs the Mass Historical Commission, and through their office, there are some grant programs. It seems like they're a little paperwork intensive. But that is a source of money, and it's one that you do hear of, not just organizations, but homeowners receiving money from it. It's typically not someone doing a small project, but it's really those who do large projects that they submit their applications through Mass Historical Commission. And if they can prove that they're saving some parts, and I'm not sure of the other criteria, there is an avenue there.
Okay, all right, great, thanks for the info. So I'm in support of this. I just wish it had a little bit, it had some strength to it to kind of actually, short circuit some of these demolitions that we've seen over the past few years. So again, thanks for your help. For your work that you've done.
Thank you, Matt. Board members, any further questions or comments? Hearing nothing from here. Members of the public, any questions or comments of Mr. Gagnon? Thank you very much for that. Do we want to act now on this particular?
Yes.
Is there a motion on Article?
I'll make a motion that we approve Article 35, demolition delay of historic significant building bylaws presented favorably.
Second the motion?
And is there further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, that is approved. That's a vote. Thank you, Dan. If you want to proceed to.
All right, Article 36 is the Historic Districts Bylaw. This bylaw was reviewed compared to those in other communities, as we had with the demo delay. And the changes to the bylaw itself are very light. They are grammatical changes for clarity. And you might notice on page 5, there's one, well, it's not really a paragraph, but there's one paragraph about the property owner's ability to appeal. That paragraph changed with town staff's suggestion. This bylaw had never been updated in 50 years as to its language. And in that time, the State Historic Districts Act had changed that paragraph of the state law, but we never changed that paragraph of our bylaw, and so it was just out of compliance. And so that was the reason for that shift. With that, overall, our changes to the bylaw were minimal because we also in our report made strong recommendations to the Historic District Commission to change some of its policies to be less of a burden on homeowners. It wasn't the place to do that in the bylaw because it's so scripted based on the State Historic Districts Act. But the bylaw allows the commission to create several policies. In our recommendations, we had one, for example, that the town, maybe 2 years ago, had begun charging property owners for applying for the legal ads for public hearings in the historic district, whereas it had not before. The Historic District Commission, the study committee, thought that was an unfair burden on the resident, and that has been changed since. So that will financially help those who are in the historic district. Our other recommendations for the application of this bylaw are for the Historic District Commission to come up with lists of pre-approved items to be used in the district. And that way, property, which the bylaw allows a process for that after holding a public hearing on such a list. And what that would allow is people who live in the historic district, when they are doing a project, if it's one of those approved products, they don't have to come to a meeting. They don't have to advertise a public hearing. The building commissioner would see their building permit, see the list of approved items, and they would be ready to go right away. It would save people time, money, and hassle through that. And as well, there was a recommendation of adding to the Historic District website financial opportunities through the Secretary of the Commonwealth and the Mass Historical Commission that could be available to them, and reevaluating siding and windows policies that the commission has had since one was 1997 and one was 2005. And building materials have changed a lot since 1997 in terms of non-wood materials that could still look like wood and be cheaper. And so that was the goal there, that was meant in conjunction with this bylaw in terms of an application to really try to reduce the burden of property owners in a historic district in town. And I'd be happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dan. Board members, questions or comments on this presentation for Article number 36?
I have a comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I think the effort to predetermine the building materials that are allowable for the homeowner will make it a lot easier, streamline the process, easier on the building inspector, and it only makes sense. So they have a list that they can choose from, a la carte, if you will, and if it meets the criteria, it's been pre-approved, it makes sense, easier on the homeowner. So I think that's a good move on this recommendation on this bylaw.
Anything else on this?
That's enough.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Matt, question on this particular?
No, I support this, I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
I'm all set, David, thank you.
Thank you. Dar?
I'm good.
Me too. Are there members of the audience who wish to speak with respect to this article? Hearing none. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve Article 36, Historic District Bylaw, as presented favorably.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion and second, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, Dan. If you could proceed to Article 37.
Yes, so Article 37, the last bylaw that I will speak with you about this evening that came from the study committee, is a proposed new bylaw. having to do with demolition by neglect. As the study committee had evaluated bylaws that other towns and communities had, many towns and communities included this sort of language into the demolition delay bylaw. The concept of demolition by neglect is a property owner who has left a historic structure empty and abandoned to let it fall down on its own. This can be used to circumvent the demolition delay. It could be used to circumvent the historic district as well. And it's a loophole that when many towns made their historic preservation bylaws, especially with many doing so in the 1970s, it was not considered back then. The study committee spent a lot of time evaluating how to do this in the most narrow and precise way. It was considered to put this concept into, as I mentioned, the demolition delay, which would then cover any home, at that point it was 100 years old or older, but in the future, 1925 or prior. Well, it would cover a lot of homes that way. It was considered to add it as language into the historic districts bylaw, which some other towns do as well. Some went one way with it, some went another way, and then some did it as a standalone. Within the historic district, that also would be, it would apply to many structures, even some that were built after the district was created, for example, and it would limit it to there are certainly important historic structures that are outside the historic district that wouldn't be covered. So what the commission went with in its final form, and this is the one that had the most revisions, is just structures, the title is Preventing Demolition by Neglect of Structures on the National Register of Historic Places. It doesn't matter if you're in a district or not. It doesn't matter how old the house is. It's only if you're on the National Register. That is the highest criteria that we could have used, meaning it is the narrowest pool of structures in town. In order to get on the National Register, a structure would have been nominated. It could be by an organization, by a person. It usually would be like the Town Preservation Commission. That's typical. They forward it on to the state. The state has to evaluate it as being historically significant enough and in its original shape enough to be worthy. And then they have to send it to Washington, and the National Park Service has to agree that it has met their standard. In order to be listed as a structure on the National Register, the property owner at that time also has the opportunity to object. And so it is a high bar to get a property listed on the National Register. As our report mentioned, what that would mean is it covers less than, it was about 1.1% of all properties that were in the assessor's records. And in layman's terms, it would be about 2/3 of the historic district and then 8 houses outside the historic district, not including like the Peabody Institute Library, of course, and such, but in terms of privately owned structures. So it is narrow. And what the concept is, because there's been a home in the historic district that due to neglect is falling apart and has been left vacant for 10 years. And so the Historic District Commission had been trying to find a way to solve this problem and had discovered before that there was no solution in current law. The idea is that in such a case, the Preservation Commission would be the commission that would oversee this. That either the Preservation Commission or the Building Commissioner could flag a structure as potentially undergoing demolition by neglect. What would then happen is the Preservation Commission would hold a public hearing on the structure and determine, is this structure being demolished by neglect? That would be the question at hand. In order for it to be found that a structure was being demolished by neglect, you would need the Preservation Commission, after a public hearing, to vote on that determination, and you would need the expert opinion of the building commissioner to concur. Him, as the structural expert, would need to agree that yes, if nothing is done, that building will collapse in on itself due to neglect. At that point, there's yet a further step, which is once it's been decided it's being demolished by neglect, the next question before the Preservation Commission would be, does it matter? They would need to find that, yes, that building matters to the history of Danvers, and that action should be taken. They could determine, yeah, it's collapsing, but structure's not that important, and it could end right there. Up next in the process, the building commissioner would have the opportunity to work out a joint agreement with the property owner covering just the basics of the structure. This is not the historic district where they're talking about materials used, what can be done or cannot be done. It's just ensuring the structural integrity of the foundation, the exterior walls, like the actual structure, supports, the roof and the chimney. And we include chimney because some historic houses, the house is kind of leaning on the chimney, and that is actually part of like the structure of the house. It's not just a nice feature, that's actually the structure. So it's just what keeps the structure standing up. To negotiate an agreement to get those parts fixed so that demolition by neglect is no longer occurring. And if unable to do so, the building commissioner could order the structure to be made solid, to be made safe. In order for any sort of like enforcement action there, as it mentions under procedure, it would have to go, the last section, 6, it could only be some sort of court order that it would have to go to a state court in order for anything such as that to be enforced. This is a very limited process, and it involves many steps that would need to be taken, and it's hoped that it would be taken, could only be used in extremely rare situations. The public hearing, the commission and the building commissioner deciding that it's demolition by neglect, then deciding if the structure is actually important to the history of the town of Danvers or not, then a voluntary agreement, required repairs, or eventually taking them to court. To put this in perspective with past or current, but past practice regarding a structure such as this. A bylaw such as this would only take effect if the structure was truly vacant. If this was like a home that somebody was living in, the Board of Health would have been on that issue way before the historic preservation people in terms of like habitability. So it would only be a structure, it could only really get to this point if it was empty, had been empty for some time. It's not a habitability concern. That would not be on the table. And just in terms of like what the current process could be for a structure like this, the current process is the town through the Board of Health has the opportunity in a similar situation to take owners of residential properties that are no longer habitable to court. If they were to do so on a structure such as this, I'm missing the word, no, receivership, thank you, Mr. Henry, and what a court could do currently, under the current rules, not what we're proposing, would be essentially taking a property away from somebody, giving it to a receiver, a redeveloper, them fixing the house, and then there's a profit split with the previous owner. That's the current system. This seeks to avoid that, to avoid a structure actually being taken away from somebody. And in that case, it's a more targeted, more direct, and less severe step than what is available. This is an intermediary step that would hopefully prevent cases of receivership for historic structures, because the current system would actually take it away from someone through the Board of Health process. So this would seek to avoid that. Mr. Chairman, I've probably talked too long on this one, but I'd be happy to take any questions. And I would say that this one has been approved by a vote of the Preservation Commission. And as well, the Historic District Commission, as well, as looked through this, as they've looked through all of them and approved for all three of these. I neglected to mention that
Thank you
previously.
very much, Dan. Members of the board, are there questions or comments? Dan,
I have a
please.
question, thank you. Dan, when you're talking about the structure of the building, why did you stop with, or why did you not include windows and doors? If the windows are falling out and they're not replaced, that's structural defect demolition going on inside from weather.
This is true, Mr. Bennett, certainly. Our criteria were taken from other communities' bylaws, and we didn't want to expand them because we really did mean for it to be as targeted as possible. In terms of if there was a structure that the building commissioner would need to ensure that the walls and vertical supports were not being damaged by rainwater, that something would have had to have been put up to block that window. You wouldn't need to replace the window other than that, but one imagines that you would need to at least, in a hypothetical situation, cover it with a tarp to ensure that it wasn't getting to that structure. But it's not telling you you need to replace the window. Just ensure it's not harming the structure. So it's the most narrow read.
I'm not suggesting they replace the windows in a building that's falling apart, it's just if the windows are missing.
In terms of the question of the windows, I suppose that the answer is kind of that's up to the building commissioner's discretion with the property owner. However they make sure that water is not touching the structure is how they do it. But we didn't want to say that you had to replace that window because it would seem as though, well, what kind of window? It almost sounds like it has to be a historic window, and it's nothing to do with historic means. It's just the building inspector needs to ensure the frame is not being affected.
Seems to me the building inspector would appreciate some guidance as far as windows and not just, I'm not suggesting they replace them, but board them up, cover them up. It's part of protecting the building, which what we're trying to do is prevent the neglect to the building. And it doesn't say windows, so maybe the building commissioner's hands would be tied somewhat in being able to enforce that.
I would say that the building commissioner was attending our meetings as we had gone through this language, and certainly the building commissioner does have authority to board up vacant structures or to require them to be boarded up already, those that might be hazardous. That is something that the town can already do regarding boarding structures up. I think that might have been why it wasn't included in this one, in terms of structures that would pose a hazard, and certainly that would get us directly to this category. If it's in danger of falling down, it would kind of already have triggered that hazard threshold.
I'm going to vote favorably on this as written, but I'm going to follow through with Mr. Henry through him to the building commissioner, get some sense of what he feels it should be in there or not, and I may come to the floor town meeting with an amendment. I think windows should be addressed. I'm not saying replaced. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Anything from you, Guard?
Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions. Understanding the intent and in supportive of the intent, I just have a couple of questions to pressure test. You talk about the number. This is restricted to the people to buildings that are structures that are part of the National Historic Landmark, pending an application, or found eligible for inclusion. Who determines the eligibility for inclusion? If a structure owner has not applied for it, has no intent to apply for it, who's going to decide that it's eligible for that? I look at these as laws. They're bylaws. So I'm just looking for opportunities to make sure we close any potential loopholes or don't open a loophole, as it were. What makes this, who determines, because I'm reading from the Appendix E, eligible for inclusion. Who makes that determination?
Yes, a structure found eligible for inclusion means the National Park Service at that last step has determined so. That's
Okay.
it's a federal term, so it would have gone through the local, the state, the federal, a process that would takes years.
Okay.
So what that means is a structure that could have been most of the way through the process and then ownership has changed. That is how the other towns phrased it, and so we included that language just based on other examples that we had seen.
So maybe Section 3 could benefit from the clarity of just adding that at the end of the sentence. Eligible for inclusion on the National Register by the National Parks, the governing body. How many structures are currently in Danvers currently on the National Register? Do you know? Would you know? Sorry, pop quiz.
So the Salem Village Historic District, for example,
Yep.
has about 120 structures.
Wow.
In my math, it was approximately 2/3. It was 157 in the historic district. 104 of those parcels were listed on the National Register. What was in the district in 1973, 1974 when it was created was all listed. So that's where we get most of our listings. And then outside of the historic districts, there were only 8 other privately owned buildings. There is also the Peabody Institute Library, but I did not include that in the math there. And there's also parcels that have no structure, like the Village Training Field in the historic district. So outside the historic district, it is 8 privately owned structures.
Okay, and again, just for clarity and legal correctness, you might want to throw the definition of uninhabited in your definitions. For how long would a building be uninhabited before it would be deemed uninhabited? So, and my other concern, and I, without, this is not to shame anyone, the most glaring example of this right now is Ingersoll Tavern. Is that on the historic register?
Yes.
Okay. And so, because I'm always very, very, very cautious about property owners' rights and the taking of property or the receivership of property, even through legal means. And I happen to have some background and knowledge of what's been going on there. And I'm not, but I want to make sure that this is not a spot zoning or spot bylaw. And we've had those discussions in the past when we were talking about Summer Street bylaw. How do we make sure this isn't spot bylawing? That's not even a word, but.
Sure. So as to, actually, just to go back one moment to the habitability part, the bylaw does not define that or require it.
Okay.
It's just in a practice, the Board of Health would have intervened prior to this if it was habitable. That certainly would have happened before this threshold was met in terms of demo by neglect. In terms of spot, you wouldn't be able to preempt someone or surprise someone with the National Register process because it takes so long and is a public process. So it would be known by a property owner what the status of their structure was, or it could be looked up. With the spot, I know the spot zoning reference to picking out some parcels. I mean, these aren't being picked out for certain local reasons because it needs to be approved by the federal government. And they need to agree that that is of such a high caliber, and they do not approve every application. Most communities in the past decade or so hire professionals now to write their applications because so many get thrown out by the National Park Service. So that is a really high bar. And I had one other point that I may have just Lost. Yes, so it would not be a surprise. It's not that anybody could be surprised, or that could be a last-minute switch up.
Okay, thank you for the answers. I'm satisfied. I'll
Thanks.
be in favor of this.
Thank you, good. Maureen, did you have questions?
No, I just agree with Dan about the windows, too, and look forward to his amendment. But I'm in favor of Parth's. Good-
Matt, had
good
you
job.
spoken on this? Did you have?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So just two things, Dan. First, can you just clarify for me the National Register? So on page 23, where the Article 37 is written, it doesn't really, it mentions if the buildings are outside the historic districts on the National Register, but on Appendix E, it actually says neglect of structures on the National Register of Historic Places. So that's an attribute that these properties have to be on the register. Is that correct?
Yes, and we picked that as the most narrow and limiting, ensuring that only the properties with the highest level of significance were taken in.
All right. And then Selectman Trask mentioned the Ingersoll Tavern. Is that 199 Hobart Street?
It is.
Okay, so I saw you noticed, you had mentioned that at the bottom of page 23. And then, so that leads me to my next question. That property had a barn in the back that many people saw kind of just deteriorate over time and I think just collapse on itself. Does this bylaw cover out, buildings that aren't necessarily occupied, like farm barns or other outbuildings?
Potentially. What it covers is it has to be an independent structure. It has to be more than 100 square feet. And it's just the general language of the sheltering of persons, animals, chattels, or property. It would have to be larger than a shed. And as part of the process, again, it would have to be determined that it's significant, that it matters, that it is being demolished. In the case of the barn at 199 Hobart, that did go back to the time of the witch trials, and one would imagine that would have actually counted under this. The average home's shed garage would never reach that threshold.
But there are situations like the one that you just mentioned that definitely would come into play there.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that info. I'm all set. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chairman.
Matt. Other questions from board members? Questions from members of the audience? Mr. Carsawan. From the podium, if you would, please, and speak into the microphone.
Good evening. William Carsawan. I own two properties in Danvers, one of which is 135 Sylvan Street, which is the former site of where the Lindens Estates resided up until 1934. You, sir, I'm sure familiar with it. Historic properties have a very, very big spot in my heart, okay? And Danvers has a lot to offer and a lot to protect. However, what I'm hearing here, I salute and understand the mission intent, but at the same time, I'm having severe heartburn, basically empowering people to force the hand of owners. I can understand negotiating skills, I can understand steering committees, but to empower anybody to basically force the hand of a legitimate owner, I encourage this board to shut that down. Have them send it back to their committee for rewording and reconsideration, but as it stands, as presented here, unless I'm missing something, and I don't think so, this is just, what you're proposing here is a police state, and I stand firmly against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carsawan. Any further public comment? Hearing none, then, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the article as presented with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, there is 4 in favor and 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Dan, before you leave, the amount of work that you obviously have put into this and the presentation here is greatly appreciated. Now I see Mr. George, the planning board chair, also obviously a collaborator with you. Are there other people in the room who have been a part of your study and recommendation process?
Not in the room, but we had Jim Sears, Corinne Doherty, and Eric Mitchell, and it was truly an effort of the entire study committee, Mr. Chairman.
Well, it shows, and thank you very much for your work.
Thanks.
He didn't have much say in the matter, but I would also acknowledge Aaron Henry. The other participants volunteered their time. Aaron was voluntold to participate, but he was there nonetheless, and did a lot of work behind the scenes to get this ready for tonight.
Thank you. Where are we, Steve?
Next on our agenda is a series of citizens petitions, starting with a petition that the board has reviewed in years past. That is a petition from Michael Trainer regarding a recall provision for the town of Danvers.
The number, please.
Sorry, it's Article 38, and it can be found on pages 24 and 25 of the warrant booklets.
Now, is anyone here to speak with respect? Yes, please. And would you mind speaking right into the microphone?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
All
yes.
right. I'll try to get as close as I can. So I'm here presenting.
Identify yourself, please.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Michael Trainer.
Welcome, Michael.
Precinct 5, town meeting member. I'm actually sponsoring Article 38, and I'm here to present it to. 38, and I'm here to present it to you. Basically, some of us listened to this last year. We kind of went through it, and I'm just here. I'm presenting this again. So what this is Danvers does not have any sort of recall process for any elected official. A lot of these positions are 3-year positions that we're in. I mean, you guys know you run every year. If someone has performs like an egregious act, just doesn't represent the town well, and citizens don't feel that they are representing the town in a positive light, we have no recourse. It's actually up to that person whether or not they want to resign. I mean, you could have someone that has been convicted of a felony, and they can stay on this board, and you guys will all get to serve with them for that 3-year period. In addition to that, just the way the world works now, the media is going to pay attention to this. They will probably be at every single one of these meetings, and it reflects on the town. If someone is not representing us in a positive light, it reflects on the town. It reflects on every resident. We saw that a little before. There's other towns that have been through this, and it's just, we should have an out. We should. And what I did to make this out, because I've listened to numerous feedback on this, is I made this extremely difficult to do. Okay? A lot of other cities and towns have this. It's really nothing new, but I'll go through the process. So basically, this is a 3-tier process. Okay? The first step in the process is someone would gather 350 signatures and submit it to the town clerk. Okay, 350 signatures, we all know is not a lot of signatures, but that doesn't really do anything. And it does one important thing, and that starts a time clock, okay? And just because you collected 350 signatures really doesn't mean much. All it does is it just starts the paperwork with the town clerk. Kind of like when you set a date to pull papers that you have to go out and get your 50 signatures to run for this board. That's what it does, okay? And that time clock is 20 business days, so that's 4 weeks. That's not a lot of time by any means. So once those 350 signatures are certified, that time clock starts, okay? And then you have to go, people have to go out at that point and get 20% of registered voters' signatures, okay? And what that will do, if they actually accomplish that, that will just create a special election. But let me just go over that piece of it. So 20% of registered voters, as we stand now with the number of registered voters we have, you would have to collect 4,517 certified signatures. So you would definitely have to go over that, okay? And you have to do that in 4 weeks. Okay, many other cities and towns have this. All these recall positions, they're really similar. Whether you look at towns like Holyoke or even Otis, I didn't even know there was an Otis, but theirs is very similar. Wenham's is similar. I think Manchester by the Sea actually has one in the legislature right now, but all the wording is very similar under this. Ours is very difficult to do. Those of you, some of you worked on the CPA before, right? I know it didn't pass. A little under half the town, I think, kind of voted for it. So you did have a lot of support with that. But with that CPA, the first time you did it, you
Mr.
had
Chairman,
about
we're talking about a recall, not CPA.
Yeah,
Can
no,
we
no,
stick
no,
to the subject?
I'm actually providing an example. So the CPA, right? Okay, you had to get 1,090 signatures, okay? And you had, the first time you did it, you had 3 months to do it, and you couldn't accomplish it. And I'm just trying to say how difficult this is. So if you have 3 months to get 1,000 signatures and it couldn't be done in 3 months, try getting 4,500 signatures in 20 business days, in 4 weeks, okay? I'm just, the biggest concern with this recall initially was we were just gonna have election after election, and, you know, people were just gonna kind of create recalls to kind of get back at people because they didn't like the way they were voting. What I'm trying to point out is just how this is executed and how it probably will never really be used unless it is a situation that generally really warrants it, okay? If you collect that number of signatures and they are certified by the town clerk, at that point, we have a special election, okay? And during that special election, over 50% of the people that vote in that election will have to vote to recall that person, okay? This is a safeguard, and it's a safeguard that this town doesn't have. A lot of towns are putting this in place now. The world is a very different place than it was 10 years ago. New Bedford is going through this right now, and they're doing this as a home rule position also. Manchester by the Sea is another one that's recently done this. And like I said, I strongly feel this is something that we should have in place, and we just don't have it. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Michael. If you'll
Yeah.
just stay there, please.
Yeah.
Members of the board, are there questions or
Chairman?
comments? Yes.
If I might. So, I'm in favor of this. I was in favor of this many years ago. I helped craft it and presented it as a selectman's warrant article. It didn't pass from the selectmen's seats. It's been refined and revised in many ways. This is a nuclear option, not a knee-jerk reaction. You can't ask for a recall for someone who votes on any subject based on the fact that they were elected. So, for example, in my example is the trash fee. If a bunch of people didn't like the way the trash fee went, they couldn't advocate for an election, for a recall petition, because it specifically says in here that it can't be for the actions of the elected official, for their legal actions. Yes, if there was conflict of interest laws violated, if there was illegalities that happened outside the purview of their election, if they were racist or homophobic or misogynistic or xenophobic, and express that at the table where they represent, where they've been elected from. The thresholds are so high that this is not going to be a common occurrence. I don't even see it ever happening. I don't think there's ever been a situation in town where this has been that nuclear that all of these thresholds can pass and finally get to a recall election. But if it was, that's the mechanism. It's not about anything that's happened over the past 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. It's about looking to the future and saying, if something horrific happens, we should have at least some mechanism of initiating a recall election. I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian, did you speak?
I did not. I listened to Mike make his presentation. I listened the last 2 years. We've voted unfavorably the last couple of times on this. I just wonder if this is something that should be looked at by the committee that's going to review the Town Manager Act, and perhaps it should be included in that document rather than a separate bylaw. And given that we have the opportunity to do that, that probably my suggestion is that we look at this. Gardner has a good point. We need something. I don't know that making it so difficult makes sense. I mean, if there's an effort for a recall, why not 10% of the voters? I mean, that's something that we should really look at instead of 20%.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This was turned off, I thought.
I didn't hear anything.
Yep, we didn't hear it.
We didn't hear it. It's all private.
I did.
So, in conclusion, I'm going to recommend we punt, give it to the committee that's going to look at the Town Manager Act. Thank you.
So could I just respond to that? So that is one way of doing it. Other cities and towns have done it that way, maybe not as many recently. The thing is, when you vote on this, if this goes to town meeting and we vote on it, we vote on this one issue, whether or not the town wants it. When you group it in, okay, if you're gonna change, say, the town charter, I'm not sure which one it would actually go in, probably the town meeting one. But you're gonna be there's gonna be a number of changes, and you're gonna pass it, and this is gonna be one of probably 10, 12 different changes you make it. And when you get to the town floor, right, you're gonna want that Town Manager Act or town charter to kind of pass, and it's gonna be vetted. Why put a hot button topic issue into that, right? And the thing is, the way I have this structured is the way, like I said, you look at a lot of these, many other cities and towns are the same way. I don't know what that committee would come up with. I would hope it would be something similar to this, but I don't really know. And it's like you said earlier, if you have one person from each precinct, I mean, just in this room here, we have 4 people from precinct 5, okay? I mean, I know this pretty well. I've done this last year, I've done it this year. And I also will point out that the Finance Committee did not recommend this last year, but the stand-in vote for town meeting, 38 people agreed with them, 110 disagreed with them.
Can I ask for a point of clarity? You made a statement that they did not, they offered a motion of no action. And that's the same discussion I had earlier. No action is not pro or con, not yes or no. It is, we recommend no action on this. And in the standing count, 110 people stood up when no action they tried to vote no. They wanted to vote no to no action.
Right.
For legal reasons, a no to a no action is not a yes. And we heard that again at this last town meeting. It was discussed by our town attorney. That is why I started the meeting saying everything should come out of here is favorable or unfavorable. And 110 people did not like no action. But by Robert's rules, that did not convert it to an action. People wanted something.
They did. And that, I guess that's what I'm pointing out. And I'm just asking that we vote on this. Just let town meeting vote on it. And like I said, I think last year was an indication that this town wants to do something. Let's vote yes or no at town meeting.
Excuse me, if I may, this is a petition that will go forwards, and town meeting will get to vote on it, whether it's favorable, unfavorable, or no action. We're not saying you're not going to town meeting.
Yeah, no, I know. It just
Okay.
it got confusing last year. I'm just asking this board that it seems the town, based off the last vote, is somewhat in favor of it. So I'm here to answer any questions you have. I've altered this. I've changed it. I've made it so that this is just here as a protection. It's very unlikely this will ever be used, but if we do need to use it, it is in place.
Thank you,
And
Michael.
that's what I'm asking.
Still questions of the, Matt, have you questions or comments on the proposed?
Yes, thank you,
article?
Mr. Chairman. So, some pros and cons about your effort. So, on the pro side, I believe that voters should have the right to select officials that they of their choosing. On the negative side, it really becomes sort of arbitrary in terms of what can trigger a recall effort. So in my experience, it could be something that I said, right? I didn't create any illegality. I just, what I may have said was either taken out of context or just was not looked on favorably. And that would have triggered a recall under this bylaw, would have triggered a recall for me. And that is an affront to my right to free speech under the U.S. Constitution, that you can just, a small group of individuals can just decide, we don't like what this person says. He's a Republican, he's a Democrat, he's an independent or whatever. And we see that behavior every single day in our society, where people just become violent when you disagree with something that someone says. So that's where I see that this would lead to. It's just so generic. The language would just make it very easy to kind of start the process, and then you talk about reducing it to 10%. You're actually, you know, you're stifling the free speech. You're creating an environment where people don't feel comfortable speaking their mind. So what you end up, the dialogue that you hear from elected officials is just basically what you want to hear and perhaps not what you need to hear. People will not feel comfortable speaking their minds because, you know, you'll attack them and throw this at them. So for that reason, I would not be in favor of this. If you tightened it up and you had a threshold of perhaps some conviction on a criminal action, not just an accusation of criminal, but someone that actually was convicted in a court of law, that I think would be more appropriate. And we've seen that in other communities. You mentioned Wenham. We saw a selectman in Wenham that was actually convicted of a, I don't know if it was a misdemeanor or whatever. That to me is the threshold, the minimum of what would allow this to be to move forward. That's all I have.
Thank you, Matt.
You say, you know, this would be easy in a small group of people. Okay, I don't have in front of me how many votes everyone was elected at. Last year, I kind of picked on Dan because he was the chair, so I'll do David, for example. He was elected with 1,160.
Michael,
Yep.
you're doing fine, but you've had your time, if you don't mind. And
I'm answering his question. So he said a small amount of votes, right? Okay, so say you were elected with 1,200 votes. If 4,500 people want to vote again, I guess is what I'm getting at, it's not a small amount. A much smaller amount voted in the first place in the first election. Okay, and then the thing is, if you name these acts, so what happens? The world changes, right? We saw like the Me Too movement. We saw a number of different things. So things change quickly. Laws don't change. So this leaves it up to the people. And again, it's not an easy process. If I start naming things 10 years from now, things are going to be different.
thank you, that is a good explanation. Maureen, did you have
Yeah,
questions or
sure.
comments?
Hi, Mike. I appreciate all the work that you've put into this. I remember hearing it on the floor. I'm mixed with this. I understand what you're trying to accomplish. Us as town officials, we take test code of ethics. Jen does all the training for all the employees. I feel that it could be a malicious intent towards people. People wouldn't want to speak their mind in fear of something like this. I know it's a lot of signatures, and you put a lot of good barriers in to make it hard, but, you know, 4,500 signatures, I don't think is a lot. I like what Dan said is, Selectman Bennett said about bringing it to the floor, like the no action or something like that. But what would town council have to say about this? I think that, you know, everybody has a duty morally. If someone gets convicted of a crime or something really bad, there's got to be some legality through the town or through town council that we can.
There's not.
There's
There is not.
nothing.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying.
Yeah, I know, but there's got to be some kind of a loophole or something.
Danvers doesn't have one.
I wouldn't think that.
But there isn't. So, Mr. Chairman, to the select board member's point, there isn't a loophole. We could have a George Soros situation. We could have someone who's convicted of crimes and still maintain their seat here. There is absolutely nothing. They were duly elected. They could be duly elected and through their election, and when they get on a board or commission, could be abject racists and spout racist rhetoric. They could be convicted of crimes, and there is no legal recourse other than another election or waiting till their next election is the only recourse this town has. This is the nuclear option if something goes horrifically wrong and the thresholds are so huge that it's not a malicious intent. You can't just get me back because you don't like what I said. You would have to convince 4,500 people to even have an election and then have that election, and the majority would decide again.
No, I understand that, but I just, for someone to do something like that, I mean, we all want the best for the town. We want to be on these boards and these committees, you know, to promote the best for the town. If somebody were to do something like that, I would think they would just quit at that point.
And you would like the morality to be
And you would
there.
hope
It's
that they
not.
would.
But they don't.
But
they might not.
I understand, but.
Okay, excuse me. That has been sufficient discussion from the board and the applicant. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak? Mr. Casawan, please speak into the microphone and keep your voice up. Mike, you don't have to sit down, but
Thank
you
you
can.
again. William Casawan, 7 Fairview Street, Danvers, obviously. I recognize the intent of what's being proposed. At surface appeal, it makes sense. However, in principle, I object, all right? If such a situation was to come about here, such as this board had 15 years ago, which brought you, Mr. Mills, to your seat, and I know, you know what I'm talking about.
No, I don't, but that's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant. The point being is if somebody is a part of this board, or whatever mechanism, and what goes on in their personal life is one thing, but how they conduct themselves in this capacity is another. And if whatever they got to say runs against the best interest of the town, the rest of you simply vote against them, okay? What I see here just reminds me of what we've been watching on television, hearing on the radio, seeing in the newspapers for the last 8 years. Where has it gotten us? It's just further divide, all right? You know, I hear the scary phrase civil war out there every now and again, which makes my blood run cold. You want to bring civil war to Danvers, Massachusetts? Think this one through carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casawan. I hope there aren't any further questions or comments from the board members. Anything further from the audience? Hearing nothing. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to move this article through with no action.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a second? There's a motion, a second. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think as leaders, we should say yes or no, and I can count to 3 as well. I would motion to send it forward favorably. Either you send it favorably or unfavorably. And by no action, that's exactly the quandary we came into last year at town meeting, where no action got 110 people to stand up and say, we don't want no action. So I make amendment, we send this favorably. And I know it won't get seconded, but that's fine.
I second the motion. Now, there is Mr. Trask's motion, which has been seconded. Is there further discussion on that amended motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
That does not carry 2 to 3. Is there a, can we go to the previous motion?
No, you can, but I will withdraw that motion
Okay.
and make a motion that we send this through unfavorably.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
As a motion and a second, further discussion on Mr. Bennett's second motion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
It is 3 to 2. Thank you. And so the motion passes
Unfavorably.
unfavorably. Michael, thanks for putting all of your effort into this and putting up with us tonight. Where are we?
Thank you.
No, yeah. No.
The no's were Gardner and
I'm a no,
David.
and David was a no.
Mike, thanks for the work and the effort.
Thank you, Michael.
It's not an easy subject, as you
No.
can see.
Steve, I think it's back to you.
I'm going to, well, we have 4 more petitions, all submitted by Mr. Zubrick, so I would cede the floor to him, though you can find.
Motion to take a short break, sir?
Short break, if we could, please, limit it to 10
We'll give-
minutes.
Give Mark time to warm up.
Yes, thank you, Maureen.
Through 42 are citizens petitions. You can find those on pages 25 and 26 in your warrant booklets. And the petitioner, Mark Zubrick, is at the podium.
Welcome, Mark, and will you start with number 39, please?
Could I just turn on the lights? I'm in the dark over
Me too.
Yeah, I know.
I can't see those characters in the back of the room there. And
Don't everybody fall asleep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have prepared...
Mark, could you speak as close to the microphone as you can, please?
Introduce yourself, please.
Mark Zubarek, 9 Glendale Drive, Danvers, Massachusetts. I have handed out 4 different supporting documents for the warrant articles that we have on hand. So if we look at page 25, Article 39, it is for the purpose of, and I'll just read it very quickly because I think it's important to see if the town will vote to explore the use and adopt, procure, and implement a handheld electronic vote tabulation system for the town meeting. The $15,000 appropriation is requested for the procurement and implementation of the electronic vote tabulation system. It is recommended the device be explored and appropriation of $15,000 come from free cash. I submitted this, and it is well documented. I handed out a package of information for you. I submitted this as a result of what's been happening in the last few years at town meeting, specifically at the special town meetings. And what actually triggered everything was the February 5th town meeting that we just had. There are contested votes that are taken on town floor, the town meeting floor, and those votes can be easily tabulated on this electronic system, which is a clicker basically, and it records the vote for that particular town meeting member, and it also provides a record of what the votes would be recommended to be kept for a record in the future. Also, the documentation that I've sent you is coming from various towns in our vicinity. We have towns that are open town meeting, and we have towns that have a similar system to our own, which I gave you a package of information that was for Westford and also for Chelmsford. Chelmsford has a very similar setup for town meeting, 169,
Mark, stay close to the microphone, please.
You mean I have to speak louder?
I've got my hearing aids turned up
Oh,
full
I see,
blast.
I see, okay. I will, thank you. The Chelmsford information that I was able to get, and I communicated with the town clerk in Chelmsford and got a lot of information. It is a very simple system that allows the town moderator to either, continuously vote by the trigger mechanism and record the votes, or in special cases where she deems necessary for a stand-up vote or a roll call vote, that can be accomplished as well, but some people want to have that roll call vote by the numbers, and that's okay. But the electronic system can prevent any contested votes that are taken. And it is very cheap. Cheap, I shouldn't say cheap. No, that's not a good word. It's inexpensive. And the thing is, what I have handed out to you is a package of information that's been evaluated by several towns and several agencies in those towns, like the town clerk's office, the moderator, and in Westford specifically, they went through 3 different manufacturers or suppliers of this system, and it was $12,000 2 years ago in '22. So that's why I put in $15,000 because of inflation and what's going on in the marketplace right now. And that would prevent a lot of the contested votes that are taken. And this will help the moderator to control the meeting a lot better, have better results, and provide very accurate tabulation of the votes that are taken.
Very good.
That's all I have.
Thank you,
on
Mark.
that.
Would you stay there, please?
Yes, I am.
Members of the board, questions or comments with respect to Mark's presentation on Article 39?
Mr. Chairman, if I just offer some experience, Kiwanis has an international convention every year, and every year there's bylaw changes, there's election of officers incoming, and because of the size of the crowd, we use a handheld device. They're not always accurate. We might have 1,600 members in the room, the vote tally comes in, yes or no, doesn't total up to 1,600. There's a defect somehow on those machines, or people aren't voting.
That's a possibility.
That's a possibility. So I'm just offering that as experience.
However, the limited number of town meeting members that we have 149. Chelmsford has 169. They've been using the system for 11 years now, 12 years. And they have very good results. I have information, further information, in regard to how it was set up. And their IT team sets up the screens on the platforms or whatever they're mounted on, and that vote is recorded right on the screen.
Thank you.
I know how it works, thank you.
Yeah. So it's a very good system, and it prevents a lot of contention.
Okay. Dan, anything else?
That's it, no, thank you.
Let me see. Matt, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I just got this material here, and I did look online in the last couple of days at it. So are you proposing that the town purchase these handheld devices or just lease them for the day? Because at most, we would only need them like twice a year, right? So what's the point of
Well, see, there's the beauty of the system. The other towns have also that same situation. And what they have done in cases of duplication of town meetings a month apart, they shared the information to other towns. So that can be a regional arrangement for a couple of towns in the area. And the thing is, yes, it is a purchase price because what you want is you want the support for the software and you want the support for the monitoring of it during the town meeting that we would have. Now, we have usually 2 town meetings. Now, their school department may want to use it for something. And that's how it's being shared. But it can be a regional thing and can be negotiated. We're doing that with the police dispatch system. We're talking about IT integration with other towns. This would be an opportunity.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Anything?
Yep. So I'm just concerned that when you purchase technology and you're not really utilizing it just like twice a year, it's going to become obsolete. And then, we're stuck with this, and then we'll have to upgrade or whatever, like we did with the Chromebooks. So that's a concern for me. And then how about security? So no one can kind of bypass controls to actually vote on a cloned handheld?
Those handheld triggers or, clickers, like I call them, are issued at the entrance to a town meeting, whether it's the auditorium or the high school or at the middle school, wherever the town meeting may take place. Those are issued to that particular individual, and they're numbered, so they know who votes and when they vote.
And how they vote.
And how they vote. And then that's another added benefit to it, because then you have 149 town meeting members, and their vote is recorded, and you can always go back and check, who voted where and how.
Yeah. And just one last thing, it's the anonymity, right? So people on both sides of you don't know how you're voting, so you feel like maybe you can actually vote your heart rather than like you're not concerned that the person next to you is going to like question your selection. Well, I like the concept, so I would be in favor if we could kind of flush out the financial aspect of it.
Thank you,
That's
Matt.
why I brought it in with $15,000 allocation, but that'd probably be less because we can negotiate some, local contributions from the manufacturers and suppliers, and also to expand our view of it.
Thank you, Mark. Maureen, did you have
Yeah,
questions?
no, I think good material, Mark. Thank you for the work, the hard work into it. I do like that, what Select Board Member Duggan said about accommodating anonymous voting. So like you said, some people might not want others to see how they're voting too. So
You can do it either way.
Yep, I like that, and I like his idea about, I like how you did the research with the communities. I love that. I always want to see what our peers are doing. And I like how he said maybe share something if we could. So I would be in favor of this.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.
Dan, did you have something else?
Mark, if this passes, when would it take effect? What is the process?
Sorry.
If it passes at town meeting floor, when would it take effect? It has to go through the Attorney General's office within 90 days, like anything else, to be
It
approved?
probably will, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I've been told by other communities, is it's a bylaw change on how you vote, because right now we have it set up to be voted by hand raising or roll call.
Right, which begs the question, do we have to change the town charter to accommodate this
I don't think
new
so,
thing?
no. This is
Yes,
bylaw
please.
change.
Yep.
That's an open question. We have language in our general bylaws having to do with the conduct of town meeting. I believe, but we haven't researched, that the town at one point adopted a local option which gives discretion to the town moderator to call voice votes. So it's, as I read this, so there is no bylaw here. This is asking the town to explore something. Most likely there would need to be a bylaw, which would have to come back before town meeting for adoption, because it sounds like a very straightforward process, and certainly towns are using it, but there may be implications for the other governing documents that require amendments associated with the implementation of this. So I wanted to clarify that. Whether it's a good idea or a bad idea is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that normally this goes through a bylaw process so that these questions can get answered as part of the process.
One of the issues or comments that I received is that it can be monitored and implemented through the Board of Selectmen instead of going back to the town meeting every time. When the town meeting adopts this process, at this time, it'll go back to the selectmen and let you guys, determine where it can go.
Just further point of clarification, every town is different. Every town has different governing documents. We have language in our general bylaws pertaining to the conduct of town meeting. And as I mentioned, the town may have adopted a local option years and years ago that governs the conduct of town meeting. So these are questions that would have to be explored as part of this process.
Thank you, Steve. Gardner?
Thank you. So, we've been working under the town meeting process, following the town meeting handbook for a long time now. There are 3 opportunities for people to vote at town meeting. A voice vote, which by state law, the town moderator can make a decision about, and if in question, she can ask for a standing vote, and if in question, a roll call can be made. So there are ways for absolute clarity already in the system. There is differences of opinion. There is contention that has happened recently that is an anathema to the town meeting itself. But there are processes, and if you follow the processes that are outlined, there is absolute, I'm going to finish. There's absolute clarity on what the vote is, including down to each person who's in that room. The problem I have here is if this ended at the first sentence, to see if the town will vote to explore the use and adopt, procure and implement a handheld device voting tablet, fine. As soon as you put a dollar amount in there, it's out the window, because you don't know what the cost is. You're extrapolating a cost based on a 2-year-old estimate that you got.
Right.
There's many variables in the system. Like Mr. Duggan, I went and I started researching these when I saw this when I got this in the mail. It depends on whether you're talking about single-click devices where it's yes, no, abstain, or if you want to record the person's vote. There's also psychological studies that show that people will trend towards whatever they see going across the screen. So you're going to want to have people say yes or no, but if they all of a sudden start seeing yeses, it's gonna trend. That's the same reason you don't announce election results till after all the polls close. And your supporting documentation is about a specific vendor. The town meeting cannot choose a vendor. That's against the law.
I did that as an example of what's available in the marketplace, and that's been used by 60 communities.
And that's fine,
there
but
are 3 other vendors.
there are multiple vendors. I looked at a
That's
whole
right.
bunch of them.
That's
But
right.
what I'm saying is, the citizens petition is trying to do administrative work through town meeting. The dollar amount would make this moot, and the town attorney's not here to answer to this, but I'd recommend that. But if you want the town to vote to explore it, that's fine. That does not infer it will go all the way through. It means that the town will explore it and bring it back, as you said, to the select board or to some future town meeting.
That's fine.
It doesn't indicate adoption, so there wouldn't be an immediate adoption of this. This is explore. So the language where you identify $15,000, I wouldn't put this through favorably. That's a non-starter.
You can take the $15,000
No,
out if
you
you
cannot.
want.
You cannot.
Well, that's the reason I put it in there, as to explore. Where was it? There's the wording.
Explore the use and adopt procedure.
And adopt. That's why I want it all in one document.
But you're forcing us to adopt something without knowing the cost. You presume the cost.
Okay.
It's legalities, Mark. How many times have we sat and said, this is a bylaw is a law is legal language, you have to be exact to the legal language.
It is a option that we have to prevent and avoid the contentious questioning of the votes at town meeting. That's the purpose and that's the aim. I could have, not given you the documentation that I have in regard to the estimate that was prepared. I could have gotten an estimate.
But that's the role of the town administration is to get those estimates.
That's why I left
Suss
it
out
to them.
the requirements. You don't indicate here whether you want, you don't want anonymous voting or you want identified voting, which is actually a big cost differential.
Okay. Dan,
If I may,
please.
this is a citizen's petition, we can't alter it. But to Gardner's point, if Mark had just presented to vote to explore, use, and adopt procedure, of electronic vote system, I would have been in favor of that part of it.
Then that's it, then
Well,
let's,
that's not for us to change it. We have to vote on what we have in front of us.
then we can amend that at town meeting.
You
So-
can't actually. Citizens petitions,
We
the signatures you gathered were on this language. This is exactly the language that will be voted at town meeting with no modifications and no amendments to it. Otherwise, it makes the signatures moot because you're saying someone signed something that isn't being presented.
I would, if I may, Mr.
Steve,
Chairman.
please.
When this has been asked in the past, the question pertaining to citizens petitions is amendment, and again, I'm probably over my skis because I'm going to start by saying I'm not a lawyer, but there can be amendments made within the scope of the article, and I think a silly example would be if there was a petition to, I'm not even going to come up with a silly example, but because I'm not a lawyer, I don't pretend to be a lawyer. Suffice it to say, I think that's an open question, whether an amendment on the floor, and that's a question that could be explored by council, or I could explore that with council, because as a citizen's petition, it will move forward to the FinCom regardless of the action tonight, so we can get that question answered.
Sure. So, and I'm in favor of the concept, and so if there is a way we can forward this, and then Mark will explore with the town council to what extent, because I agree with the concerns about the moneyed amounts and all they're in there, but also that I think it would be a good thing to explore and to eventually utilize. But how to make that happen tonight and to shorten this discussion so there's no more argument on it. Any thoughts on that? Steve, well, you were kind of suggesting that it's possible to forward it with a vote of, which?
Favorable. Favorable.
Favorable.
I'd like to do it in a way that you can explore, and if it is possible to amend.
Could I just read one statement here that I received from Town Hall, legal opinion, basically? Electronic voting systems should be amended to recommend that the device be explored. That's specifically the language that I used. Use of devices may create inconsistencies between that Town Meeting Act and Town Manager Act and general laws. And I understood, I explained that. If there is broad support, this could be brought back to town meeting, verified, and the reason I put in explore and then implement is to go through the process and let somebody make the decision, and the Board of Selectmen can make it.
But I think that's the point, Mr. Chairman, is you ask, and you're right, and I understand exactly what the town must have sent back to you. You say explore and adopt, but you're saying you must adopt, if this were to pass, town meeting is saying we must adopt a tabulation, not explore. It says adopt, procure, and implement. And it's saying you must do that. You must adopt, you must procure, you must implement without knowing a cost. And without knowing the ramifications of and the parameters of the voting system. Anonymous are identified, and the costs. So if you had said explore, the use and adoption of exploring that is great. Perfect. Want to hear it. And maybe it's a good solution. But the exploring of it identifies the parameters and also identifies the cost. You say explore and adopt. We must do this. And that's where I have problems with the language.
Okay, how do we solve it?
I would like to, well, you haven't gone to the citizens, but then I'll make a motion to forward this with an unfavorable recommendation.
Now, that being said, Steve, I never did, I don't know what the law is. Is this something that could be subject to amendment to just explore so that the concept can go to the town meeting and the concept can be voted by the town meeting?
I think the specific question I'd be asking council is whether striking the appropriation, and I guess the board would have to direct me, are we also asking whether you could strike, adopt, procure and implement, so that the recommendation here is to explore the use of. The question for council is whether that would be within the scope of the amendment or outside of the scope
We're
of the
not going to
amendment.
finish this tonight.
But I can certainly have that answer before
What
the
if we
finance committee.
postponed action on this until what,
Thursday?
do you think you could get a response,
I can call David
Steve,
tomorrow. Yeah, I
from-
can talk to
Motion
Why
to
don't we-
table this?
A motion to table, and then Mark will revisit on, I think, Thursday night, Steve, is that? And then maybe we have an answer to make it work. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Stay there, don't go.
I'm not going anywhere.
I didn't hear a second.
There's a
Second
motion
motion
to
to table.
table, there's a second on a motion to table. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Good. We'll table till Thursday. Thank you. Mark, what is your next?
Oh, my next one is a, okay, Article 40. And I'll just read it because I think it's important to understand what I'm going after. Article 40, expand and improve the pilot, which is payment in lieu of taxes from Beverly Airport, to see if the town will vote to recommend that the town manager improve and expand the pilot program to maximize tax receipts for the town of Danvers on the 170 acres devoted to the BVY Airport, Beverly Airport. The existing forfeiture of real estate taxes to Beverly is now totally unreasonable to the amount of industrial property being occupied by Beverly Airport. The town has already engaged our state delegation in discussions about updating not only the airport pilot, but also other pilot programs in our region and jurisdiction. The town meeting, I would like to have them recommend to expedite the process and to offer support statements to our legislators. And this is something that the town manager and I have talked about in the past. There's the legislation that has been filed by Sally Kearns, and the legislation has been dormant for about a year right now. Now, I know that there are issues with collecting taxes for the Beverly Airport. However, if we have legislative support and the legislators are willing to present the case to the legislature, why aren't we sending a letter of support or encourage our legislators to perform this improvement in the pilot recording or receiving pilot funds to the town of Danvers? We're always looking for funds, but we don't seem to be able to go and after and get them. So that's my point here. And the collection of the real estate taxes or payment in lieu of tax is a negotiated compromise by two communities. That has already been done, and it's been stagnant for years, 30 years. The airport has 170 acres located of Danvers property on the airport grounds. If we looked at the, and this is hypothetical, if we looked at the 170 acres being converted to industrial commercial land, zoned under industrial and commercial, that will be worth $42 million, and that's how it is set on the books in Danvers. That would generate over $1 million in real estate taxes. I know that there's an FAA restriction on that and all that, but I think the town manager is thinking in the right direction, is that we do need a pilot program that can be negotiated with the city of Beverly, because that's what the whole thing revolves around. And the legislators need our support, which I'm asking the town meeting to, get that support. Let's have the town manager send a letter and support that activity.
I think there are a lot of people that want to engage in your conversation, Mark. So why don't you pause there? And let me ask if,
Mr. Chairman?
who's signaling?
Gardner.
Gardner.
So, Mark, this is similar in nature to the citizens petition you offered last year, is it not?
No, last year I wanted to go after the real estate taxes value as it was for the 170 acres, assessed at $42 million and $1 million worth of real estate taxes. And I realized that I was pounding the walls because nobody wanted to hear that.
Well, so let me finish my question. I understand your position. And certainly I would like a lot of taxation money to come in. It helps the town. However, what is frustrating to me is the answer has been provided to you over and over and over again. When the government gave back the land in 1950 to the city of Beverly, the state set a legislative calculation on taxation, which the town has absolutely zero control over. None whatsoever. We know that. You said that tonight. House Bill 2857 was introduced by Sally Kearns in January of last year.
Right.
The state has to make that change. The town cannot make that change. I'm going to finish. The town cannot make that change. And as you stated, it's state and FAA who have to make that change. You keep beating the town up for not collecting taxes. The only negotiation we have, and you like to be saying that, is we can negotiate that calculated rate of just under $7,000 or representation, for which this board has reaffirmed over and over we want 2 representatives on the airport commission in lieu of that $7,000. That's the only negotiation. We don't have the ability to negotiate a dollar amount higher than what the state has calculated. And in response to last year, even though your citizens petition was voted down, this board actually got together and voted to send a letter of support to Sally Kearns, and we did that. You're asking for action that A, we don't control, and B, we've already done.
Well, I have not been made aware that there was a letter sent, and Sally has not responded to the request that we have made at the Airport Commission meeting. Now, discussing the issue with the town manager, and I liked his ideas. The pilot program is a program where we can negotiate with the city of Beverly for some kind of a remuneration of the taxes.
No, we cannot. This is where you don't hear what people are saying, even though you know it's a state calculation. We cannot negotiate with Beverly for $1 more than what is the state calculation. Not a penny, not $1 more. We can't go to Beverly and say, hey, we want more money. Hey, we think there should be. In other pilot programs like the Salem Reservoir and other opportunities, there are opportunities for us to talk about a valuation, and even those we go to the state for. You presume that we have controls we do not have control of. And that's just a simple fact, and I would love to get more taxation from any source that I can get it from. It's not protection of the airport, it's the fact that we don't have that opportunity. And you've asked for 3 different things in this citizen's petition. You ask for the town manager to negotiate something he can't. You then ask for us to the town manager to expedite the process, which is a state process, and you ask us to go to the state and offer our support. We have offered our support. It was an open vote of this board to offer support, and a letter of support be sent to Sally, and it was. So whether you saw the meeting or not, I don't know.
No.
But it happened. That has happened. Okay. So the effect here is you're asking for 3 things, of which we've already done 1, and 2 is impossible for us to do.
God,
thank you.
You've said that.
Thank you.
And I know that you will not support, and that's good. We got to move on. Matt, do you have something necessary to say?
I'm all set.
Thank you. Maureen?
I'm all set, thanks.
Good.
Good, good.
Anything to say?
From the public?
Oh, yes. After. Please speak into the microphone
Yes,
after
sir,
you
I will.
identify yourself.
Tony Betancourt.
Welcome, Tony.
15 Thorpe Circle, Precinct 5, Town Meeting Member.
Welcome, Tony.
Okay. I know what you're saying is true. Teddy Spiliotis looked into this before, and I looked into it. It's got to be done at the State House, legislative action, okay? It can be done. He says a lot of work, it can be done, okay? Another thing, Wyndham gets $25,000 a year right now from the airport for 40 acres, okay? They have the right this year. Yes, they do.
No, no,
Yes, they do.
Please let him
Can,
speak.
can I finish talking, please?
Yes.
They cut it down to 20, okay? They give them 20. They give them a $5 break. They give them a break. They have a right to go up. Now, this year, if they want 30,000, they can ask for 30,000, okay? I don't know why it's true, okay? And I know that because I listen at the meetings. I go to all the meetings and all that stuff there. What I'm telling you is true, okay? If you don't believe me, look into it, okay? That's what they get, okay? So I don't understand what's going on here, okay? We have to do more for our residents, okay? That airport is taking advantage of us, okay? And we're trying to get something done, but they're not listening to us. They are pounding us all the time. So we have to get something done, and that's all I can say.
Tony, thank you. You are in favor of this article. Mr. Casawan. And please speak into the microphone.
Yes. William Casawan, 7 Fairview Street here in Danvers. Okay. I think everybody here realizes I'm one of the airport commissioners from Danvers, and I've looked into this issue. So I've talked with, I'll call the chief financial officer of the town of Wenham, people in the city of Beverly. I've talked to the airport manager about this, and this is what I was told, all right, that under Mass Law, General Law 59, Chapter 7, property tax exemptions, states real estate and personal property owned by the United States or leased is exempt as long as it's for public usage. Well, that's the airport, period. That's how it was explained to me. I'm not sure if that's the total mechanism or if it ties in with what Selectman Trask has said. But when I spoke with, just to respond to Mr. Betancourt's, when I spoke with the fellow at Wenham, I said, well, you're getting some money. He says, yes, that's true. He says, if you recall, somewhere around 15 years ago, there were 2 houses which abutted the airport. The town bought them, demolished the homes, and absorbed the property. He says, we have to concede taxes on the property that the airport footprint is on, but we make sure we're not surrendering the real estate taxes we would get on those 2 lots. So that is what I was told. So yes, they are receiving money, but as far as I'm concerned, they feel justified in pursuing that amount for what would normally be homes, which they could get taxes on, all right? So everybody I've spoken with, this is exempt. I spoke with the airport manager this afternoon, talked about what's going on in terms of paperwork, because this is basically a paperwork exercise. I says, okay, fine, I'll go forward with that, and that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Casawan. Let me see now. Well, look at, Mark, I don't know that this really is the other things that are necessary to say for the vote on whether or not the board is going to support this for purposes of town
All
meeting.
this article is asking for is support from the town meeting to Sally Kearns to proceed and pursue the matter that she's filed already.
All right.
That's all it is.
Got it. Is there further discussion? Members of the public, please don't.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we forward this citizen's petition with an unfavorable recommendation.
Yeah, is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Second for purposes of discussion. There's a motion and a second for purposes of discussion. Is there any necessary discussion from members of the board?
I do want to make a comment that I'm in favor of urging our state legislature to do something so we can get the money. We've already done that. I don't know that this would accomplish anything, period, because it's not going to give us money without the legislation.
Steve, just not to be argumentative, but Mr. Zubrick said that this article does something that is not reflected in the language on the screen, which he's asking town meeting to take action on. As is pointed out, and I just want to clarify something Bill said, something Tony said, the pilot, that land is exempt. The reason that there is a pilot at all is because Mass General Law dating back 85 some odd years spells out in black and white exactly what the formula is for determining the value of the pilot payment. It is an antiquated formula. It makes no sense. I have had exhaustive conversations with our state delegation. The process to change that is a bill at the legislature to be voted on by the full legislature. The town has no control over that other than to convey to the legislative delegation what our desire is. That has been done multiple times. Mr. Zubrick knows that. If you're, I don't vote on these things. I have full speaking rights. I will say this is redundant. This is already happening. And 2/3 of this are outside of our control and fly in the face of state law.
Thank you, Steve. There is,
David,
yes.
can I move it to be favorable to, so it goes to Sally Kearns?
That's not what.
No,
that's
well.
what this is
You,
doing.
I'm sorry, you can amend this to be favorable.
gonna
So-
amend
so
it to-
You can
yeah.
amend it, but that's not to send it to Sally Kearns. We've already voted to do that. This is to send it favorable to town meeting.
To town meeting, then I want to amend it to be favorable to town meeting, please.
Okay, where are we?
There's
She
an
needs a
amendment,
second.
she's made an amendment in a second.
I'm sorry?
Matt second the motion.
Motion is to, to forward this with
To
a
town meeting,
favorable
yes.
recommendation to town meeting.
Yes, please.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so there's a motion and a second. Further discussion on Maureen's motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No. That doesn't carry, Maureen. Now, we have
His
nothing.
original, no, he has, his original motion was send it through unfavorable.
Would you
And
please
seconded.
My original motion was send it through unfavorable, and
And
just
it was-
briefly, two of these things that cannot be accomplished.
Okay, you've already said that.
Yep.
4 times.
No.
There is a motion, there's a second. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion carries, and we are heading on to, Mark, your next,
Environmental impact statement.
yes, please.
Okay. Article 41, and let me just read it because I think this was done to get the point across. To see if the town will vote to recommend that the airport commissioners, Danvers and Beverly, explore and perform an environmental impact study report to protect our residents and the entire region. The existing small regional airport in Beverly, Danvers, and Wenham has grown significantly. The airport emissions have increased and are being an impact on health concerns and quality of life of our residents. The residents of Danvers recommend that formal environmental impact report be considered to address all contributing environmental issues and the planned runway and facilities expansion. The reason for the environmental impact statement is because that report, when it's studied, would encompass such issues as we have been dealing with in the town of Danvers: noise from training planes, single and multi-engine commercial jets, master plan expansion size of the airport considerations, master plan lengthening of existing runway draws larger planes, planning, zoning, conservation issues of a jurisdiction in regard to the 170 acres that we have on the airport property, air emissions, jet and single engines, leaded fuel emissions, entire region, impact of hangar construction / proximity to residents on Old Burley Street. They have water drainage and neighborhood issues. PFAS, contaminants. Water monitoring wells are already affected in our town. However, we don't know whether it's coming from the airport or not, because the airport says that we had fire engines out there with foam, and that's how the contamination gets started. And the airport has wells located along the perimeter to identify any movement of that PFAS contaminants. Lengthening the runway by 600 feet triggered many safety issues that should be addressed in this environmental study. All this is I know that we cannot perform the environmental impact study because we don't own the airport. But we have a large contributing land mass that's in the airport boundary. And it is affecting our residents, whether it's through noise, jet emissions. Jet flights are coming in. I even reported one the other day. I'm sitting there in the living room and there's a jet coming through. I can see the numbers on the tail. So all this is let's move forward and ask the Beverly Airport to perform this study, because that will address all of the components that make up the problems that we are dealing with.
Thank
That's
you,
it.
Mark.
Chairman, before
Thank
the
you.
board, just as a reminder, we had a public hearing in this room several years ago. That question was asked directly of the airport and the consultant, and the answer was that they respectfully declined to do that. So again, this is not our, we can recommend it, but we have absolutely no control over this. So this is-
Over the last 4 years, we have been contending with the
Mark, I hear you, and I can totally sympathize with you. Let the board members speak
Fine.
as to your petition, please.
Sorry about that.
Dan.
Thank you. Again, he's overreaching with the language. If it was simply to see if the town will vote to recommend that the airport commissioners explore an environmental impact study, 21E is what they're called, I would fine with that, but he's getting into noise, expansion, which is not in our purview. So it's too broad, the language. Again,
Matt, do you have questions or comments?
I'm in support of moving this forward to town meeting.
Thank you. Maureen?
I'm also in support to move it forward.
Okay, thank you. Gardner?
I'm with Dan. This is again overreach and pontification about what's things that we can't control. We can, you're right, recommend the airport commissioners do this. Whether they do that and they follow up is entirely on them. But it's, I think that you're using town meeting as a club that just shouldn't be utilized. And we've already heard them say, no, they're not going to do it. But I also want to make sure that when construction happens, environmental impacts happen. Wetlands, proximities, lot lines, that all happens anytime there's a construction. That also happens at the master plan. And when they expand the runways for safety zones, that happens. So many of these things already happen, whether it's encapsulated in the breadth you want, it may not happen. But, so, because of all the other stuff packed in here, I would think this is unfavorable.
Okay. I think that the chance of getting an environmental impact statement, no matter what its name is, 21E or anything else, from Beverly as a consequence of town meeting action is nil. But I'm also sympathetic, if you want this to be brought to the town meeting with an unfavorable recommendation so that you can publicize the matter again to the town meeting body so that they know that this is really a stranglehold on the residents. I will vote to forward it. There'll be a recommendation for unfavorable or whatever.
Why would it have to be unfavorable, David? That's my issue.
Because frankly, Mark, it's like asking someone to, would you do this knowing that it's going to fail? Excuse me, that this is not anything that can effectively get what you're asking for. So it's like, are you foolishly asking the Beverly Airport to do a 21E? They're not going to do it. And so I don't want to have this board in the position of recommending something that we know is going to fail. Hold on, Tony. So it's my vote is going to be like a sympathy vote for you and Tony, okay? But as far as affirmatively thinking that something can come of it from Beverly and the airport? I don't think so, and I've been listening to this for 10 years.
Well, I've been
Okay,
listening
so-
to it for 30 years now,
I know,
since
I
the
know,
landing of the trees.
Tony, is there something you must say now? Get up there if you're gonna say, and speak into the microphone.
Yes, I will.
And don't take too long.
I won't, I promise. Listen, we're gonna let them pollute us? Is that what we're gonna do? We're gonna let them contaminate? There's so much PFAS on that property already. They have a consultant there already, okay? There's PFAS on that property. So all that water is coming into Danvers, okay? All that water that's running off in the streets there is probably contaminated. We should have them look into it and see what's going on, because even the well at the high school, okay?
I get it.
It's probably contaminated. You're putting water on the fields.
I
Come
get it.
on.
I get it. Thank you. Now, do we have a motion of any kind?
Mr. Chairman, I move we forward this to FinCom with an unfavorable recommendation.
Is there a second? There is no second. Is there any other motion?
Motion that we pass this to FinCom with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
There is 4-1.
Thank you very much. I appreciate, the Danvers residents appreciate it.
I know that.
Okay.
You now have 2 minutes for your remaining citizens
I have
petition.
2 minutes again?
Yes.
The clock's running.
Oh.
David, Mr. Mills, I'm sorry.
You can call me whatever you like.
I know, but that's okay.
My father appointed you to the Finance Committee and started this
I know,
public
and then he
discussion.
started me on the path
I know.
of no return.
My path of no return. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I know. Your
Don't
path.
take a lot of time with this, Mark, please.
This is straightforward. I wanted to go to town meeting because that's who really makes the decisions regarding this matter.
You don't have to read it.
I think I do, because I think this one is
You
to
might
be
lose a vote if you do.
emphasized.
Well, there might be somebody still at home watching.
Okay.
Yeah. I handed out all the documentation to you
I'm
guys.
usually in bed at 9:30, Mark, please.
I know. Reverse the imposition of the so-called trash fee. To see if the town will vote to reverse the actions taken to authorize the so-called trash fee. That means and methods used to identify and authorize the trash tax was introduced without the legislative body consultation or approval. The so-called trash contract shortfall can be supported by an appropriation of $1.3 million from free cash, actual tax receipts, that will support that function. This has been, as you know, this has been discussed many times, and it needs to be reversed. The Board of Selectmen had an opportunity in the past to reverse the action that was taken at that time, two months ago. The trash fee imposed was a tax, and it should not have been called a fee. I know that the legal beagles, your counterparts, are going to say that I'm totally up the creek, but I believe that this is a tax, and it is legitimized by the actions of our legislators when they passed that chapter and verse in regards to the sanitary disposal of trash. We as a town have not adopted that law. We have not adopted the concept of that law, because that law is a 2.5 override version to allow the cities and towns, or the cities specifically, to impose a trash fee, they call, but it's a tax.
Mark, I have listened to this for 1 year. I'm going to scream.
Well,
there are 3 votes against you and 2 votes for you. Why don't we just get to it and move on? There is no need to talk about trash any more tonight unless people want to override me. Please.
Well, I like to override you.
No, because you've said it all. I've heard.
I know that.
I can
I know.
recite it for you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mark, for your presentation. Are there any necessary questions or comments from the 3-2 board sitting here? Tony, no, not really, okay?
Not yet.
I'm trashed out. Matt, any necessary trash comments?
I'd like to move this forward favorable.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Wait a second. Gotta
Okay,
be-
go ahead, we can have discussion under the second.
Yeah, okay, so there's a motion and a second to move it forward favorably. Discussion on the motion, please.
I have to ask a question. At the last town meeting, town attorney clearly stated state law leaves this responsibility with the executive board. That is this board. Initially, there was a question whether it was the town manager or this board, but this board voted 3-2, and it is this board. That law hasn't changed. And nothing about it has changed. And while we sit here and say we can find money in the free cash, you sat here in the all-day session, and all 5 of us did as well. There wasn't a single motion to reduce the budget to accommodate any amount of money. We passed that budget in its entirety because the services we wanted to provide the citizens were there, written down, and that's what we wanted. This will cut those services.
Because you have made that comment, I will repeat a comment that you've been making for years, that we as a town are responsible for the vote that's being taken at town meeting, and the meal that we eat has to be paid for. And that's the discussion we have every year in December or November. The problem is that this particular fee or tax, I call it a tax, and you have not budged on that issue. The
Mark,
public asks
I've
for
heard
this.
it, I've heard it, I've heard it. I've sat across the street for 55 years watching every penny go out of this town. I am convinced there is not a penny's worth of waste, at least in the years I've been working. I have heard everything about trash for a year. I don't really want to hear one more word about trash unless someone says, this is a matter of national emergency. Please. There's a motion, there's a second. Do we need further discussion? Hearing none. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Is
Mr.
there another
Chairman,
motion?
I move we forward this with an unfavorable recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Thank you, Mark. And thanks everybody else for the cooperation. I simply can't do it. I can't do. Thank you, Bill. Where are we, please?
Mr. Chairman, there were a few other items, but I'm thinking, given the late hour, we'll just call it and continue on Thursday.
Is that, everybody able to come back on Thursday?
I am
Oh,
not, Mr.
wait.
Chairman. My apologies. I'll be away at a family wedding in Kentucky.
You said that, yeah, I told you. Now, we have some other agenda items. Don't go, Tony.
We do.
Oh,
Mark, maybe it's not your, but I think we got a couple of other regular selectmen agenda items. You were a selectman, you know about that.
I know.
The town manager will report to the board on various items of interest.
Given the late hour, I am all set, and I will see you all Thursday.
Thank you, Steve. Anything else?
The board will consider consent calendar items as they appear below.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's a vote.
Correspondence, select board new business, previous new public business, updates, and select board closing comments.
Matt?
Yeah, just a couple of things. First, back to the new business earlier this evening from John Boner. He mentioned a $100,000 gift from the late
98,000.
Rosanna Massey, and I went to the court's online system to see if I could find her will that would have been filed with the probate court and was not able to do that. But it's just a concern that this large sum of money that was donated to the town, specifically to the senior center, to help with this meals program, and then the money has been in limbo. And the Salem News article, February 20, 2024, there's a quote attributed to Pam Parkinson, who was the director of the senior center. The quote is, "A generous donation by Rosanna, also known as Roz Massey, who left a part of her estate to the senior center after her death in 2018, is still sitting in a special account with the town that the senior center has not been able to access," according to Parkinson. So there was mentioned earlier that there was the COVID had an impact, the meals program went away, but according to Pam Parkinson, the money was not available somehow in an account here at Town Hall. I think it doesn't reflect positively on the town for other people that might be considering leaving gifts in their wills. If they think that the money will be, appropriated in some other manner other than what they were, what their wishes were. So I think we really need to kind of do a deeper dive on that, perhaps.
Mr. Chairman, I would welcome an opportunity to offer some context. I was also confused in reading the article. A $98,000 gift was provided to the town for senior nutrition. We tasked staff to come up with a plan to implement an expansion of the nutrition program. The plan that was presented would have created a structural deficit that would have occurred a year into that program. We asked to have them revise the presentation, then COVID happened, and no further presentation was made. So the dollars are sitting in a segregated account as the law requires. And I am confident that the new director will come up with a very creative way to put those dollars to use as the law requires.
Okay.
So, thanks.
Fair enough. Thank you for that clarification. Hopefully that will happen forthright. And then just one other thing. I just got a message, I think, over the weekend from a resident about late-night Amazon deliveries. I think you were complaining about a package delivery at 2 o'clock in the morning. And we're looking to kind of enact some kind of legislation that would prevent delivery drivers from showing up in the dead of night. But I think that's just fallout from our many people's desire to have instantaneous delivery. So I don't think good luck with trying to have them delivered like in the middle of the day. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Maureen?
David, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, anything? Or you
question
are going to hold to the end?
No, if I'm,
Okay,
just
go ahead.
a question for you. Given that we have FinCom meetings on April 9, 10, and 11, are you assigning or asking people to attend those meetings?
I would like to assign us on April 9, which is a Tuesday. I would attend, representing the board. On Wednesday, April 10th, I would ask Maureen to attend and represent the board. On Thursday, April 11th, I would ask Gardner to attend and represent the board. And on Monday, the 22nd, I would ask you, Dan.
I will be in the air coming from JFK.
Can I switch the 11th with that, with you?
No, because I'll be in
Oh.
the air going to someplace.
Okay.
I don't mind taking Monday, April 22nd. And if I have to, I can also do the 11th.
That might be the
Matt,
solution.
could you do Wednesday, April 24th?
I would love to, and thank you for offering.
You're on the edge of your seat, kind of open the...
24th.
What are you saying, Kathy?
Oh,
You
nothing,
look-
no. Who has the 22nd?
I do. I'll take the 11th and the 22nd.
Oh, God, are you sure?
Yeah, well, someone's going to do two. I don't care.
Thank you. All right, thank you all. And Matt, you got the 24th?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Where are we, Kathy?
I think we're on closing comments. I think everybody had their comments. To
Guy,
Dan?
did you have your
I'm
closing comments?
given the late night, I'm going to pass. Thank you.
Guy,
Nope.
Dan?
Good.
You all set?
You all done?
No, at the end.
Oh, good, I have no comment, I've already made it. I've made a scene here for the last hour.
So
That's
I just want to comment first that it was great to be asked to adopt make the town a Purple Heart community. I think that's very important. I was happy to see a gentleman here tonight with his Purple Heart. And I think I heard him say he hasn't taken it out of the drawer for 52 years. That's amazing, that's unfortunate. But when you see a veteran, please say thank you. And I'm all set.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody, for going through this. Is that it, Kath?
How about a motion to adjourn?
Do we need a motion?
Move to dissolve.
Well, we're adjourning to Thursday, at which point we will attempt to cover the other 35 of the 43 articles for town meeting.
See you all Thursday.
Should we start earlier?
Hey, Bill?
We can't,
Oh,
right?
because we've already posted
We already
notice.
posted, we